Chapter 4654. It's indeed the body of a human king. I wonder which part it belongs to. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. That bronze chest was exactly the same as the one he had obtained. Before this, Lu Ming had already learned from the bronze chest that the torso of the human king's body had been born. Only when the limbs and head were born together could one sense it. Hence, he was already clear that the limbs and head, except for the right arm, had all been born. He had previously guessed that it might be in the hands of the Heaven Destroyer and the Heavenly Palace. There's only one Heaven Destroyer. Could it be that the Heavenly Palace has three of them? Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. In the blink of an eye, another dozen days passed. In these dozen days, the Heaven Destroyer and the Heavenly Palace did not make any moves. The main reason was that both sides were keeping an eye on each other. If one side made a move, the other would immediately move as well. Hence, neither side sent anyone into the halo first. The main reason was that the divine masters of both sides had yet to arrive. It was not the time to make a move yet. Pull one hair and the whole body would be affected. If one side started to take action, the other side would definitely take action as well. At this time, the Heaven Destroyer was ready to make a move. This was because their divine masters were almost all here. This was the first time Lu Ming truly witnessed the power of the Heaven Destroyer. 5,000. A total of 5,000 divine masters. This was a terrifying number. Lu Ming had not expected that the Heaven Destroyer would have 5,000 divine masters. However, when he thought about it, it was normal. Other things aside, the Heaven Destroyer had more than 1,000 divine masters at the 1,000-year battlefield. There were a few other places as important as the 1,000-year battlefield in the universe's ruins. The Heaven Destroyer had a large number of elites guarding each of these places. In addition, there were a few bases that were also guarded by a large number of elites. In total, it was normal for there to be 5,000 divine masters. This was not the total number. There should be some divine masters who had not arrived. However, most of them should have arrived. However, the number of divine masters at the Heavenly Palace was even more shocking. There were a total of 8,000 divine masters. This shocked Lu Ming. After all, the Heavenly Palace still had the Dark Universe to guard. The Dark Universe scattered almost half of the Heavenly Palace's power. This meant that the Heavenly Palace had at least 8,000 Almighty stationed in the Dark Universe. The power of the Heavenly Palace was truly astonishing. If not for the Dark Universe holding back half of the Heavenly Palace's power, the Heaven Destroyer would not have been a match for the Heavenly Palace. Of the 8,000 divine masters, 6,000 were from the Heavenly Human tribe, while the other 2,000 were from other tribes. The celestial race was known as the strongest race in the universe. It wasn't just for show. Their strength was truly incomparable. This didn't include the Quasi-Saint tribe. The Quasi-Saint tribe also had about 300 divine masters. Although this number couldn't be compared to the celestial tribe, it was already much stronger than the other 9 tribes in the top 10 tribes. In terms of numbers, they completely crushed Heaven Destroyer's side. Let's go. Fei Huang ordered. The 5,000 divine masters of the Heaven Destroyer immediately flew toward the halo. The moment the Heaven Destroyer's side moved, it was immediately discovered by the Heavenly Palace. Since the Heaven Destroyer has set off, we won't wait any longer. It doesn't matter if the minority didn't come. Let's set off immediately. One of the Heavenly Palace lords said. Remember, once you enter the world within the halo, you have to listen to a mortal young master. Another Heavenly Palace lord also instructed. The divine masters all nodded. Among them, only a minority knew the true identity of the Yi Immortal. These people stood behind the Yi Immortal with fanatical expressions. Most of them were people on the same level as the Lord of Heaven. Although the others didn't know the true identity of the Yi Immortal, seeing so many people on the same level as the Lord of Heaven obediently listening to the Yi Immortal, they knew that the Yi Immortal's identity was definitely not simple. Naturally, they wouldn't disobey the order. Moreover, it was the Heavenly Master who had personally instructed them. Let's set off. The Yi Immortal said indifferently, a confident smile on his face the entire time. He took the first step forward. Yi Qiuxin and a few other Lord of Heaven experts followed closely behind. More than 8,000 divine masters marched toward the halo in a grandiose manner. The halo was boundlessly large, more than 100 million times larger than the planets of the primitive universe. The Heavenly Palace and the Heaven Destroyer entered the halo from 2 different directions. They were like specks of dust flying into the ocean. They were truly too insignificant. The closer they got to the halo, the more they felt how enormous the 8 halos were. Lu Ming couldn't help but sigh. The person who had laid down this array was truly incomparably powerful. Very soon they entered the range of the halo. They didn't sense anything strange. They weren't attacked, nor were they restricted in any way. However, the reaction of the human king's right arm within the primitive ring was even more intense. The center of the halo was pitch black, like a pitch-black vortex that constantly spun. In any case, Lu Ming was unable to see what was behind the pitch-black vortex with his eyesight. However, Origin Realm experts could barely see that there seemed to be a continent within the pitch-black vortex. As for the specific features of the continent, they were unable to see it clearly. When Lu Ming's group passed through the halo and entered the central region, a powerful suction force suddenly appeared from the pitch-black vortex, sucking Lu Ming's group in. The suction force was very strong, but Lu Ming felt like he could still break free if he struggled as hard as he could. However, Lu Ming's group did not struggle. They wanted to enter the pitch-black vortex in the first place, so there was no need for them to do anything unnecessary. They cooperated with the suction force and quickly charged into the pitch-black vortex, vanishing from sight. As soon as they entered the pitch-black vortex, Lu Ming felt like he was being pulled by a force, constantly moving forward. After who knew how long, the pitch-black vortex suddenly vanished, and a vast expanse of land appeared below Lu Ming. Lu Ming was currently plummeting. He hurriedly circulated his forbidden power and stabilized himself, stopping in the air. Afterwards, he glanced around and discovered that the surrounding space was filled with people. The 5,000 divine masters of the Heaven Destroyer were all present. They had not split up. Below them was a dense forest. The forest was boundless, stretching as far as the eye could see. What huge trees! Many people sighed in amazement. The trees in the forest were all extremely huge. Any single one of them was over 100 meters in diameter, and there were many that were 1,000 meters in diameter. Their height was even more terrifying. They were basically colossal. Lu Ming felt like he had entered the elven palace of the past. What surprised Lu Ming the most was that the continent gave off a familiar presence to Lu Ming. Primordial, ancient, vast, heavy, grand. This presence was actually the same as the continent in the primordial ring that Lu Ming felt. It was basically the same. The continent in the primordial ring was made from a complete fragment of the primordial continent of the previous epoch. Could this continent also be a fragment of the primordial continent that was kept intact? Lu Ming's mind raced. This was very possible. The physical body of a human king was separated and sealed. This incident happened before the primordial continent was shattered. Someone had cut off a small piece of the primordial continent and sealed it in the continent of the 1,000-year battlefield. That was why it was kept intact and full of vitality, unlike the fragments of the primordial continent in the universe ruins, which had long lost the appearance of the primordial continent. Chapter 4655. This continent is intact and full of life. I wonder if there's any danger. Let's gather and move together. Don't split up. A deep voice rang out. It was a burly primitive god that spoke. Lu Ming recognized this person. His name was Lion, and he was an expert who stood at the peak of the almighty level. He was no weaker than the Lord of Heaven, who stood at the peak of the heavenly palace. A 9th tier almighty was not considered a peak almighty. From the 1st tier to the 9th tier almighty, one had to condense the universal bridge, making it longer and longer, extending toward the cosmic sea. At the 9th tier almighty level, the universal bridge would reach the cosmic sea and connect with it. At that time, one could comprehend the cosmic origin. Once the cosmic origin was formed, one would condense an origin seed. That's right, an origin seed. Only by condensing an origin seed could one be considered a peak almighty. The Lord of Heaven of the Heavenly Palace was a peak almighty who had condensed an origin seed. Of course, a peak almighty's origin seed was not as weak as Lu Ming's. The amount of origin energy stored was so little that it could only unleash one attack. A peak almighty's origin seed contained much more origin energy than Lu Ming's. The more origin energy it contained, the stronger it would be. Of course, one's strength was also related to the quality of the origin energy. Thus, the difference in strength between peak almighty could be huge. When the origin energy condensed by an origin seed reached a limit, the origin seed would sprout and grow an origin root, which was also known as an origin root. At that time, one would have stepped into the origin realm. Of course, it was extremely difficult to make an origin seed sprout and grow an origin root. No matter what, a peak almighty who had condensed an origin seed was extremely powerful, much more powerful than a 9th tier almighty. Once the origin energy was unleashed, a 9th tier almighty would not be able to resist and would be easily killed. As for Lion, he was considered a top-tier expert even among peak almighty. He was only a step away from the origin realm. He was one of the leaders of the Almighty on Heaven Destroyer's side. As Lion spoke, everyone gathered together in a group and flew towards a certain direction. They flew for tens of thousands of miles without encountering any abnormalities or dangers. That is, suddenly someone looked to the right. In that direction there was a small black dot flying rapidly towards them. After a few breaths, the black dot became clear. They were all living beings. They are from the Heavenly Palace. Many people's expressions changed drastically. The people from the Heavenly Palace entered this continent from a different direction from us. Why are they so close to us? Someone cried out in alarm, finding it hard to believe. They had thought that they would not encounter the people from the Heavenly Palace so soon. He didn't expect to meet people from the Heavenly Palace as soon as he entered. The people from the Heavenly Palace also noticed the people from the Heaven Destroyer and stopped not far away. Then the two heavenly human youths, escorted by a group of powerhouses, came to the forefront. These two young men were naturally Yi Immortal and Yi Qiuxian. Is that the Lu Ming who defeated you with the taboo body? Yi Immortal's gaze immediately fell on Lu Ming. He seemed to be very sensitive to the power of the taboo body. That's right, it's him. However, he won by luck last time. Next time I will definitely suppress him. Yi Qiuxian's eyes were cold. A loss is a loss. However, he is not simple to be able to defeat you. Indeed, the taboo body is a scourge. None of them can be left alive. Yi Immortal said coldly. Immortal young master, what should we do now? A lord of heaven bowed and asked. Of course we will attack. We have more than 8,000 Almighty on our side, while the traitors only have about 5,000. We have the absolute advantage. We will defeat the traitors in one fell swoop and take the human king's body from them. Moreover, these 5,000 Almighty make up most of the traitors' Almighty. If we can destroy them in one fell swoop, the traitors will lose their Almighty and will only have a small amount of origin energy left. Yi Immortal said coldly. His voice spread to the ears of the people from the Heavenly Palace. Get ready, attack and annihilate the traitors. A Lord of Heaven shouted as his aura erupted. He took the lead and rushed out. Kill all the traitors. The people from the Heavenly Palace, including more than 6,000 Almighty from the heavenly human race and more than 2,000 Almighty from other races, rushed toward Lu Ming and the others. Only the people from the Quasi-Saint tribe did not attack. More than 8,000 godly lords attacked together, creating a mighty aura that caused the sky and earth to violently tremble. The terrifying power formed waves of pressure, and the massive trees on the ground below began to explode and turn to dust under the pressure. Their battle cries shook the heavens. More than 8,000 beams of light shot toward the heaven-exterminating troop. The void was instantly smashed, forming huge black holes. The scene was terrifying. Defend with all your strength. The people from the Heaven Destroyer were shocked. Some of the top Almighty roared. They only had about 5,000 Almighty, which was more than 3,000 fewer than the enemy. The gap was too big. If they fought together they would definitely lose and be slaughtered. Only by gathering everyone's strength and defending with all their strength could they block the enemy's attack. On the side of the sky-exterminating troop, all of them gathered together and used all of their defensive secret skills to attack. Inside the Heavenly Palace, countless dazzling lights spread out, forming layers upon layers of defense. There were huge shields, tortoiseshell-like light shadows, huge divine walls and huge metal tablets. Lu Ming also unleashed his full strength. He cast all the secret skills of the 3,000 ancient secret skills that were used for defense. Great defensive technique, great shield technique. All kinds of defensive secret techniques and treasures filled the void. Boom, boom, boom. The next moment, the attacks from the Heavenly Palace bombarded the defenses of the Heaven Destroyer, causing an earth-shattering explosion. All kinds of defensive secret techniques and treasures vibrated violently. After all, the enemy had more than 3,000 people, and their attack power was too strong. If they fought head-on, just this wave alone would kill many people from the Heaven Destroyer. However, they did not seek to win, only to not make any mistakes. They only focused on defending. By gathering everyone's strength, they managed to defend against the attacks from the Heavenly Palace. Although all kinds of secret techniques and treasures vibrated violently, in the end they still managed to defend. Continue attacking, don't give them a chance to breathe. A Lord of Heaven expert roared. Kill. More than 8,000 Almighty from the Heavenly Palace roared and launched the second wave of attacks. Retreat, defend and retreat at the same time. Some of the experts from the Heaven Destroyer shouted. Everyone continued to gather together to defend and then slowly retreat. Boom, 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 Another series of violent explosions, and a terrifying force swept out in all directions. The land within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles was completely destroyed, and not even a blade of grass grew. Chapter 46-56. However, this continent was unimaginably sturdy. The shockwaves from the attacks of so many divine masters only destroyed a layer of the surface and the vegetation on the surface. They didn't penetrate the earth or crack it open. If this had happened in the desolate universe, with so many powerful beings battling against each other, they might have been able to destroy many galaxies. It could be seen how sturdy this continent was. The second wave of attacks was also blocked. The Heaven Destroyer used this wave of attacks to quickly retreat. Continue attacking. Don't let them escape. The Heavenly Palace's people roared and attacked with all their might. However, the Heaven Destroyer's side was defending with all their might. The Heavenly Palace's people couldn't break through in a short time. After 7 or 8 waves of attacks, they still couldn't break through the Heaven Destroyer's defense. Damn it. Many Heavenly Palace's experts roared. They felt that the Heaven Destroyer was like a tortoise and it wasn't easy to attack. As long as they could break through the Heaven Destroyer's defense and force the Heaven Destroyer to fight head-on, they could easily defeat the Heaven Destroyer. In a head-on battle, the Heavenly Palace had the absolute advantage. Now, the most troublesome thing was how to break through the Heaven Destroyer's defense. Not far away, Yi Immortal and Yi Qiuxian stood quietly in the void and didn't make a move. Quasi-Saint Tribe, why aren't you making a move? Attack together and break through the Heaven Destroyer's defense. Yi Qiuxian looked at the people of the Quasi-Saint race and ordered coldly. Our Quasi-Saint Tribe has always stayed out of things. We won't get involved in the matters between the Heavenly Palace and the Heaven Destroyer. A youth from the Quasi-Saint Tribe smiled and said. This youth looked to be in his 20s. He was handsome and had an unparalleled temperament. His white clothes fluttered in the wind and he belonged to the type that could charm thousands of girls. What do you mean by not getting involved? The primitive universe is under the jurisdiction of the Heavenly Palace. Regardless of the race, they have to listen to the orders of the Heavenly Palace, including your Quasi-Saint Tribe. Now I order you to attack. Yi Qiuxian shouted and looked coldly at the Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth. Hee hee. The Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth smiled faintly with contempt. What are you laughing at? Yi Qiuxian's gaze was cold. Your words are too laughable. That's why I'm laughing. Your Heavenly Palace commands the other races, but you want to order my Quasi-Saint race around? Aren't you too naive? The Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth sneered. Audacious. Is your Quasi-Saint race trying to rebel? I would like to see how capable you are. Yi Qiuxian shouted coldly and took a step forward. His figure was like a bolt of lightning as he charged towards the youth of the Quasi-Saint race. Behind the youth of the Quasi-Saint race, a middle-aged man stepped forward and wanted to attack, but the youth waved his hand to stop him. Of Yi Qiuxian's. Of Yi. In the next instant, Yi Qiuxian's attack arrived. His perfect heaven's power erupted as he blasted his palm towards the youth of the Quasi-Saint race. The Quasi-Saint race's youth didn't dodge and also blasted out a palm to meet Yi Qiuxian's palm. Yi Qiuxian snorted inwardly. He could see that the Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth was a 6th-stage divine master like him. It wasn't that he was arrogant, but that he was too strong. Apart from Lu Ming, no one in the universe could fight with him. Of course, Yi Immortal was an exception. The Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth was too naive to want to face his attack head-on. Boom. The two palms collided with one another, resulting in a deafening explosion. Yi Qiuxian's expression changed. He felt that his perfect heaven's power had met a strong opponent. He couldn't instantly defeat his opponent's power. Instead, he felt that there was a terrifying power surging toward him from the Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth's palm. Yi Qiuxian couldn't help but retreat by more than 10 steps. On the other side, the Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth also retreated by more than 10 steps. In this move, the two of them were evenly matched. Haha, perfect heaven's power is indeed powerful. I've learned a lot today. The Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth laughed loudly. His eyes glowed with strong battle intent. As for Yi Qiuxian, his heart was in turmoil and he couldn't calm down. He was actually blocked. Although he had only used 80% of his strength, who could be sure that the Quasi-Saint Tribe's youth had used his full strength? Maybe he hadn't used his full strength. In the primitive universe, apart from Lu Ming, there was actually someone who could fight with him. This was a huge blow to Yi Qiuxian. I don't believe it. He must have used his full strength just now. The perfect heaven's power is invincible. Apart from Lu Ming, no one in the same realm can fight with me. Yi Qiuxian roared in his heart and was about to attack again. Yi Qiuxian, enough. At this moment, Yi Immortal shouted and Yi Qiuxian stopped abruptly. Immortal young master, let me teach these quasi-saint tribe a lesson. These people are becoming more and more rebellious. Yi Qiuxian said. No need. I have my own plans. You may leave. Yi Immortal said with a cold expression. Yi Qiuxian didn't dare to disobey Yi Immortal's order and could only leave obediently. However, he was very unwilling. I didn't expect the quasi-saint tribe to have another genius who can control the power of a quasi-saint. Congratulations. Yi Immortal said with a smile. Immortal young master is too polite. I was just lucky to control the power of a quasi-saint. The quasi-saint tribe's youth replied with a smile. He didn't dare to slight Yi Immortal. Although he didn't know Yi Immortal's true identity, seeing how Yi Qiuxian and the Lord of Heaven of the celestial race were respectful to Yi Immortal, he knew that this person's identity was absolutely shocking. Today there is no need for the quasi-saint tribe to attack. We are enough to break through the defense of the Heaven Destroyer. Yi Wuchang said as he turned his gaze back to the battlefield. Yi Qiuxian was bewildered. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that Yi Immortal was actually a little afraid of the quasi-saint tribe. Yes, it was fear. Yi Immortal was the strongest existence in the history of the celestial race. It was simply inconceivable that he would be afraid of the quasi-saint tribe. Although the quasi-saint tribe had always been ranked first among the top 10 races, no matter how strong they were only one of the top 10 races. In the eyes of the celestial race, they were just ants that could be slaughtered at any time. The strongest existence in the history of the celestial race was actually afraid of the quasi-saint tribe. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Yi Qiuxian would have found it hard to believe. At the same time, he understood one thing. The quasi-saint tribe wasn't simple. They weren't simple at all. He had underestimated the quasi-saint tribe in the past. It seems like we have to attack. Yi Qiuxian, get ready to activate the Human King's left arm. We need to borrow the strength of the Human King's physical body to tear apart the defense of the Heaven Destroyer. Yi Wuchang said. After he finished speaking, his figure had already rushed out. As he rushed out, he had already taken out the Human King's left leg and fused it into his left leg. When he appeared in the sky above the battlefield, he had already activated the power of the Human King's left leg. Boom. Yi Wuxia took a step forward and a gigantic foot appeared, stomping towards the exterminating Heaven's troop. Its power was extremely terrifying. Chapter 46-57. Oh no, that's the power of the Human King's body. I'll stop him. Primordial God, she roared. He also controlled the Human King's right leg, so he could sense Yi Immortal's attack the moment it happened. Without any hesitation, she also fused with the power of the Human King's right leg. With his head down and his leg up, he charged up, activating the power of the Human King's right leg. Similarly, a huge leg appeared and smashed upwards, colliding with Yi Immortal's attack. Boom. An earth-shaking explosion rang out, as if two Origin Realm experts were clashing. Then the two huge legs collapsed at the same time. She and Yi Immortal retreated, one flying upwards and the other falling downwards. This move was a draw. In the next moment, Yi Immortal activated the power of the Human King's left leg and attacked. She countered the attack as well. With Yi Immortal's strength, activating the Human King's left leg could only last for a little more than a breath's time. Hence he had to end the battle quickly. The speed of the two was extremely shocking. A little more than a breath's time was enough for the two to exchange many moves. Boom, boom, boom. In a little more than a breath's time, the two had exchanged 7 or 8 moves. They were both equally matched. Their battle prowess seems to be about the same after activating the Human King's body. They're both at the Origin Realm. It doesn't seem to have much to do with the cultivation of the person activating it. Lu Ming observed carefully from the crowd. Shi's cultivation was at the 8th layer of the Divine Master Realm, which was clearly higher than his opponent's. However, the two of them were evenly matched. Moreover, the battle prowess he displayed was also at the Origin Realm. It was about the same as Lu Ming's when he activated the Human King's body. It didn't seem to have much to do with one's cultivation. Perhaps it was because the power of the Human King's body was too terrifying, while their strength was too weak. They could only use it as a trigger to activate a portion of the power of the Human King's body. Hence, no matter how strong they were, as long as they activated the Human King's body, the power they could erupt with was at the Origin Realm. The two of them exchanged 7 or 8 moves. Neither of them could do anything to the other. Both of them had almost exhausted all their strength, so they had to stop. Yi Immortal retreated rapidly. And she landed in the Heaven Destroyer. Yi Qiuxian, you do it. Yi Immortal instructed. Then he took out several divine pills and swallowed them, starting to recover his strength. Leave it to me. Yi Qiuxian stepped forward. The left arm of the Human King fused into his left arm. Break! Yi Qiuxian roared and punched out. The power of the Human King's left arm exploded, and a huge fist blasted towards the Heaven Destroyer. Not good. It's the power of the Human King's physical body again, she roared when he sensed it. Should I make a move? Should I make a move? Lu Ming's mind raced. He was also a little anxious and couldn't decide whether to make a move or not. No one knew that he was in control of the Human King's right arm, and he did not want to expose it. Given his cultivation, there was no way he would be able to protect such a precious item if it was exposed. Even if he could protect it, he would be targeted by the people of the Heavenly Palace. There would definitely be endless pursuit. The Heavenly Palace would definitely spare no effort to snatch the right arm of the Human King from him. His original plan was to silently obtain the torso of the Human King's physical body, or even the other parts of the body, and complete the body. Just as Lu Ming was hesitating, Yi Qiuxian's attack had already landed. Boom, boom, boom. An earth-shattering explosion rang out. Yi Qiuxian had activated the left arm of the Human King and erupted with the power of the Origin Realm. It was too powerful. The layers of defense laid down by the Heaven Destroyer were destroyed one after another. In an instant, more than 200 layers of defense were destroyed. Many of the Divine Lords defending that area shook violently. Their faces turned pale and blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. Fortunately, they managed to block it. However, many of them felt extremely heavy. The attack power of the Origin Realm was too strong. It would break the balance. If the attack continued, it would most likely tear a hole in their defense. On the other hand, if the experts of the Heavenly Palace swarmed in, their defense would be completely torn apart. By then it would become a chaotic battle. Once a chaotic battle broke out, the Heaven Destroyer's side would be doomed. Break for me. Yi Qiuxian roared and was about to attack again. He could only hold on for a little more than a breath. He could not afford any delay. He had to tear apart the defense of the Heaven Destroyer in one go. He's coming. Block it with all your strength. You must block it. Someone on the Heaven Destroyer's side yelled. Boom. Yi Qiuxian threw another punch with astonishing power. Whoosh. At this moment, Lu Ming soared into the sky. The Human King's right arm had fused into his right arm. He had decided to attack in the end. At this moment, there was no other way. If he was exposed, so be it. It was better than having the defense of the Heaven Destroyer torn apart. Once the defense was torn apart, the Heaven Destroyer would be doomed. At the same time, Lu Ming would also be in danger. The people of the Heavenly Palace would definitely target him first. Facing so many experts, no matter how strong he was, only death would await him. The power of the Human King's right arm was stimulated. Lu Ming threw a punch. A similarly huge fist was formed and collided with Yi Qiuxian's fist. An earth-shattering roar erupted, and the two of them retreated at the same time. He blocked it. The people on the Heaven Destroyer's side were ecstatic. At the same time, they were a little stunned. They did not expect that there would be someone who could block Yi Qiuxian's attack. Didn't the Heaven Destroyer only have one Human King's body? Lu Ming, you actually have a Human King's body too. At this moment, Yi Qiuxian roared and continued to attack. The two of them exchanged another blow. It was still a draw. As for the others, they were greatly shocked. It seemed that Lu Ming had really mastered a Human King's body. Especially Tang Jun and Mo Chang, and the others who were more familiar with Lu Ming. They looked at each other in dismay. They were already quite familiar with Lu Ming. Along the way, they had already seen through all of Lu Ming's secrets. But now they realized that they were gravely mistaken. Lu Ming was hiding countless secrets and trump cards. It's the Human King's right arm. The four limbs of the Human King have appeared, but where is the head? Yi Immortal muttered. He judged that the Human King's head should not be on the Heaven Destroyer. If it was not on the Heaven Destroyer, then where was it? Yi Immortal glanced at the young man from the Quasi-Saint race. That young man from the Quasi-Saint race even smiled. Boom boom boom. Lu Ming and Yi Qiuxian's speed was very fast. At this moment they had already exchanged 5 or 6 blows. And more than a breath of time had passed. Not good, I've exhausted my energy. Retreat. Yi Qiuxian was shocked. He circulated his remaining energy and quickly retreated. I still have energy for one more blow. Kill. Lu Ming roared and threw a punch at Yi Qiuxian. Just now, Yi Qiuxian had attacked first. Lu Ming attacked later. Therefore Lu Ming still had energy for one more blow. A terrifying fist force blasted towards Yi Qiuxian. Yi Qiuxian's pupils shrank rapidly. However, Yi Qiuxian was surrounded by experts from the Heavenly Palace. Immediately, 5 experts at the level of the Lord of Heaven joined forces to block Lu Ming's punch. Chapter 46-58. 5 experts on the same level as the Lord of Heaven appeared in front of Yi Qiuxian and used a defensive secret technique in an attempt to block Lu Ming's attack. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion rang out as a violent shockwave swept out in all directions. The defensive secret technique used by the 5 Lord of Heaven was directly destroyed. The violent shockwave struck the 5 Lord of Heaven. The 5 Lord of Heaven's bodies shook violently as they retreated and spat out large mouthfuls of blood. 3 of them had their arms blown apart and were covered in blood. The other 2 who were slightly weaker were even worse off. They were sent flying into the forest far away and broke a dozen trees before crashing into the ground and creating a huge crater. They lay in the crater with pale faces and were unable to move at all. Although the 5 Lord of Heaven level experts were not dead, they were all heavily injured. The difference between a Divine Master and a Reciprocity expert was not small at all. What a pity! Lu Ming sighed. After this move, he had used up all the energy in his body and could not continue attacking. If he used another move, he would definitely be able to kill several Lord of Heaven. Lu Ming borrowed the force of his punch and flew into the Heaven Destroyers group to be protected. The 4 limbs of the Human King's body have appeared. Where is the Human King's head? Yi Immortal muttered. At this moment, Yi Immortal's expression suddenly changed. That was because the Human King's left leg on his body suddenly shook violently and broke free from his control, flying into the sky. Stay here. Yi Immortal roared as he grabbed the air with his hand. A powerful suction force was generated as he tried to grab the Human King's left leg. However, it was useless. The Human King's left leg shook slightly and broke free from Yi Immortal's power, flying into the sky. At the same time, the same thing happened to the Human King's bodies on Lu Ming, Yi Qiuxian, and Shi. They all flew out of their bodies. Lu Ming used his taboo power to stop it, but it was useless. It was the same for Shi and Yi Qiuxian. Even if the experts beside them wanted to help, it was useless. Those peak Divine Master experts coughed up blood and retreated after being shaken by the Human King's physical body. The 4 limbs of the Sovereign Personage's body all flew into the sky, emitting a dazzling light. Seal. Suddenly, a loud roar reverberated throughout the entire area. Everyone couldn't help but look in the direction of the Quasi-Saint tribe. At this moment, more than 300 Divine Masters of the Quasi-Saint tribe formed an array and shot out rays of light to suppress a stone head. This stone head had flown out from the body of the youth from the Quasi-Saint race. The head of the Human King's body. Everyone's heart trembled. So it turns out that the head of the Human King's physical body is with the Quasi-Immortal race. Lu Ming, Yi Immortal, and the others couldn't help but think to themselves. At the same time, what shocked them even more was the strength of the Quasi-Immortal race. Only 300 Divine Masters came from the Quasi-Immortal race. Previously, these 300 Divine Masters didn't reveal their auras but used a technique to conceal their auras. They hid it so well that even peak Divine Masters couldn't see through them. Now, in order to stop the Human King's head, the Quasi-Immortal race unleashed their full strength and revealed their cultivation. 6th level Divine Master realm and above. The 300 Divine Masters of the Quasi-Immortal race were all at the 6th level of the Divine Master realm and above. Even the weakest among them was at the 6th level of the Divine Master realm. This caused most of the people present to be shocked to the extreme. The Quasi-Immortal race was ranked first among the top 10 races and had always been ranked first. It wasn't strange for them to have 300 Divine Masters. However, all 300 Divine Masters were at the 6th level of the Divine Master realm and above. This was terrifying. This meant that the Quasi-Immortal race had an unimaginable number of Divine Master experts. Those who came were only a portion of those with higher cultivation. The Quasi-Immortal race actually had such terrifying strength? Especially the people from Heaven Destroyer, their expressions were even uglier. Fortunately, the Quasi-Immortal race hadn't made a move. If the Quasi-Immortal race had helped the Heavenly Palace attack them, they wouldn't have been able to resist and would have been broken through. Among the people present, only the Yi Immortal looked calm and didn't seem surprised. However, the 300 Divine Masters of the Quasi-Immortal race joined forces to suppress the Human King's head, but it was to no avail. The Human King's head shook slightly and broke through the 300 Divine Masters of the Quasi-Immortal race's blockade. The 300 Divine Masters turned pale and couldn't help but retreat. The human king's head had already flown high into the sky. The human king's limbs and head seemed to have produced some kind of resonance in the sky and emitted dazzling rays of light. The next moment, the human king's limbs and head flew toward the north at an astonishing speed and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Everyone was dumbfounded, including the Yi immortal. They obviously hadn't expected this scene. What's going on? Chest, what's going on? Why did the human king's body suddenly fly away? Lu Ming's spiritual consciousness condensed in the chaos ring and asked the bronze chest. However, the bronze chest didn't respond. No matter how Lu Ming asked, the bronze chest didn't respond and acted as though it was dead. The Yi immortal, Yi Qiuxian, Shi, and the youth from the quasi-immortal race also asked the bronze chest, but the bronze chest also didn't respond. Let's chase. The youth from the quasi-immortal race shouted and led the quasi-immortal race experts to fly toward the north. Immortal Prince, what should we do? A heavenly human race expert asked the immortal prince. Strange now. Even if we catch up now, we might not be able to catch up. Let the quasi-immortal race take the lead. You guys continue to attack and kill the rebels. The Yi immortal ordered. Kill. The experts from the heavenly palace continued to attack. The attacks of more than 8,000 divine masters covered the sky and bombarded the heaven destroyer. There were too many of them. Although Lu Ming had severely injured 5 experts of the Lord of Heaven's level with one move, it didn't affect the overall battle situation. The heaven destroyer could only defend with all its might and didn't have the strength to fight back. Save me, save me! Suddenly, a cry for help came from not far away. Many people looked in that direction. Over there were 2 experts of the Lord of Heaven's level. They were the 2 people who had been severely injured by Lu Ming. They were lying on the ground and couldn't move at all. They were trying their best to heal their injuries. Unknowingly, a huge tiger had appeared not far away from the 2 of them. This ferocious tiger had 2 long fangs as it stared greedily at the 2 heavenly human tribe heavenly monarchs. The ferocious tiger let out a long roar and pounced on the 2 heaven monarchs. It opened its bloody mouth and was about to swallow the 2 heaven monarchs. The 2 Lord of Heaven were terrified. They burst out with all their remaining strength and barely blocked the tiger's attack. At the same time they screamed in horror. Evil beast, you're courting death. The people from the heavenly human race shouted. Dozens of experts from the heavenly human race struck at the tiger. Dozens of beams of light flew towards the ferocious tiger and bombarded its body, causing it to roll away. However, the tiger didn't die. There were only a few wounds on its body and blood kept flowing out. Chapter 46-59. The tiger seemed to be infuriated after being injured. It stared at the heavenly humans and roared with murderous intent in its eyes. How dare an animal refuse to submit? Kill it. The dozens of heavenly humans attacked again. Dozens of attacks flew toward the tiger again. This time the tiger learned its lesson. It turned around and ran away. It leaped through the forest at an astonishing speed and disappeared into the depths of the forest in the blink of an eye. That animal ran away quickly. The heavenly humans snorted and continued to attack the heaven destroyer. However, before they could make 2 moves, a roar suddenly came from the depths of the forest. The roar was earth-shattering. It pierced through the sky as if it was going to tear the sky apart. Those enormous ancient trees were also trembling non-stop. Some of them even exploded. Rumble. In the next moment the ground shook violently. It was as if another giant creature was coming from the depths of the forest. Soon, everyone saw clearly that it was indeed a huge monster. It was a ferocious tiger. It was more than 1,000 meters tall. It had 2 fangs in its mouth that were sharper than a sword. Wherever it passed, the giant ancient trees would explode into pieces. Behind it were 2 smaller tigers. One of them had wounds on its body. It was the one that was beaten away by the heavenly humans. The giant tiger in front of them roared. The terrifying sound waves made many people's faces change drastically. They kept retreating. The tiger's eyes were blood-red. It was filled with murderous intent. It glanced at the heaven destroyer and the people from the heavenly palace. Then it leaped and charged toward the heavenly palace. It waved its claws. A few sharp claws tore through the void and grabbed at the heavenly palace. Block it. The people from the heavenly palace were shocked. The tiger's aura was too terrifying. It was far beyond the almighty realm. It gave them the feeling that they were facing an origin. The people from the heavenly palace stopped attacking the heaven destroyer. They changed the direction of all their attacks and blasted at the tiger. The combined attack of more than 8,000 divine masters was unimaginably terrifying. No matter how strong the tiger was, it was impossible for it to contend against more than 8,000 divine masters. The claw light it unleashed was instantly destroyed. Many of the remaining attacks landed on the tiger. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions rang out as the tiger's huge body was sent flying. It rolled on the ground for hundreds of thousands of meters, smashing into countless trees. However, this tiger was actually fine. There was not a single wound on its body. After rolling for some distance, it struggled to get up and shook its head. Then it let out an angry roar. Its killing intent was even stronger than before. Brr. The ferocious tiger roared and charged towards the heavenly palace. It waved its claws and spat out a huge beam of light with terrifying power. "Let's attack together," a lord of heaven roared. More than 8,000 experts from the heavenly palace attacked together, blocking the tiger's attack and sending it flying. However, the tiger was still fine. It shook its head and stood up. There was not a single wound on its body. Even those experts on the level of the Lord of Heaven could not leave a single wound on its body. Reciprocity. This tiger must be at reciprocity, Jianchen sighed. Someone roared. Even if it's at origin realm, it can't be completely unscathed from the attacks of so many divine masters. Someone else roared. Many people's faces were ugly. Yes, there were more than 8,000 divine masters, and many of them were above the 7th layer of the divine master realm. There were even quite a few peak divine masters. With so many experts working together, they could definitely beat a divine master to death. However, this tiger had forcefully withstood their attacks. What was going on? An ancient remnant. This is a remnant from the ancient continent of the last epoch. Its body is extremely powerful and its defense is shocking. It's not something you can break through. Ye Immortal's voice rang out. An ancient remnant. Everyone was shocked. Could it be that this ferocious tiger had lived from the previous era until now? An existence at origin realm had the same lifespan as the universe. As long as the universe was not destroyed, it would not die. It was normal for it to have lived from the last epoch until now. Let's retreat. Heaven Destroyer would not miss such an opportunity. Now that the people from the heavenly palace had no time to deal with them, it was a good opportunity to retreat. More than 5,000 people from Heaven Destroyer gathered together and retreated. Even if the people from the heavenly palace wanted to pursue them, they could not. The tiger was attacking them again. The people from the heavenly palace could only focus on dealing with the tiger. The tiger's attack power was about the same as an ordinary origin realm expert, but its defense was too strong. Its skin was thick and its bones were extremely tough. So many attacks landed on it, but they could not break through its defense. In the end, Ye Immortal had no choice but to give the order to retreat. The 8,000 divine lords from the heavenly palace attacked as they retreated. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared from the area. After the people from Heaven Destroyer left the heavenly palace's line of sight, they sped up and flew to the west. After flying a certain distance, they flew to the north. After all, the body of the human king was flying to the north. They speculated that the torso of the human king was very likely to be in the north. The 4 limbs and head of the human king had sensed the torso of the human king and flown to the north. Only by flying to the north could they find the body of the human king. However, they did not fly at high altitudes. Instead, they landed in the forest and quickly moved through it. The appearance of the ferocious tiger just now reminded them that this continent was very likely inhabited by species left behind from the previous era. The ancient continent of the last epoch was mysterious to them. They did not know how powerful the creatures of that era were, but they could tell from the tiger that there were definitely existences at origin realm. They did not dare to be careless. Flying at high altitudes made it very easy for them to be targeted. If a few origin realm primordial descendants came, they would probably be wiped out. However, even though they moved through the forest, they still encountered attacks before long. Several huge pythons appeared. They were completely azure, each several hundred meters long and over a dozen meters wide. They coiled around several large trees and lunged at Lu Ming's group. Fortunately, these pythons were not too powerful. They only seemed to be at the 8th or 9th layer of the Divine Lord realm. Their attacks were not very powerful. However, their defenses were shockingly strong. Not even 9th layer Divine Lord experts could break through the defenses of these pythons. In the end, several peak Divine Lord experts had to use their origin energy to kill these pythons. After killing the pythons, the peak Divine Lord experts did not waste any of their energy. They stowed away the pythons' corpses. These pythons were primordial descendants. Their defenses were just too monstrous. Using their skin to refine leather armor was extremely shocking. This made many people's eyes light up. Ignoring everything else, These primordial descendants were treasures on this continent. Their entire bodies were treasures. If they could kill the tiger from before and use its skin to refine leather armor, probably even Origin Realm experts would struggle to break through its defenses. Unfortunately, it was just too difficult to kill. Chapter 4660. The group continued to head north. In a few hours they encountered several waves of attacks. The strongest one was at the peak of the Divine Master Realm. It had a powerful physical body, and its defense was terrifying. It rampaged and killed several Divine Master Realm fighters. In the end, it took several Peak Almighty experts working together, and one Peak Almighty expert even took out an Origin-level divine weapon to finally kill this Peak Almighty being. This caused everyone's hearts to feel heavy. It was too difficult to kill these surviving creatures of the untainted land. If there were more of them, it would be difficult to deal with them. The group rested for a while and continued forward. Some Peak Divine Master Realm experts arranged for some people to scatter around and search for traces of the surviving creatures of the untainted land. If they found a particularly strong one or a large group of them, they would immediately take a detour. Half a day later, suddenly, enemy attack, enemy attack. A loud roar came from the forest ahead. Then there was a violent explosion. Sword chi and blade radiance burst out and a great battle broke out. Everyone's muscles tensed up. They looked around and prepared for a great battle. Whoosh, whoosh. The scattered god lords quickly retreated, retreating from the ground to where the main force was. What's going on? The primordial divine spirit, Lion, asked. There are surviving creatures of the untainted land. There are many of them, someone yelled. Why did you only find out now? Lion roared. They're too cunning and fast. They can hide in the trees and it's hard to find them. You have to be careful. They might have already approached, someone replied. The next moment, Lu Ming felt goosebumps all over his body, as if something terrifying was staring at him. Brr, brr. Immediately there were sounds coming from all directions. This sound was almost like a wolf's howl. Then Lu Ming and the others found that many giant green wolves appeared on the giant trees around them. Each of these giant wolves was 10 meters tall. They were huge and their bodies were green, similar to the color of the giant trees. They could easily blend into the giant trees. There were at least a few hundred of them. They stood on the branches of those huge trees, glaring at Lu Ming and the group like tigers eyeing their prey. Many people's hair stood on end. They had been discovered by so many surviving creatures of the untainted land so close. Defend, defend, the lion roared. Roar, with a long howl, hundreds of giant green wolves charged towards the Heaven Destroyer. Lion roared and took the initiative to attack. The other members of the Sky Exterminating Troop also attacked together. More than 5,000 attacks blasted out in all directions, bombarding the giant green wolves. Many of the giant green wolves were sent flying, but they shook their heads and stood up, completely fine. Only a few giant green wolves had been killed, and they had all been killed by a Peak Divine Master. His defensive power was shockingly strong. Ow ow ow, the giant wolf howled and continued to charge towards the Heaven Destroyer. These giant green wolves had varying levels of combat power. The weaker ones were at the 3rd level of the Divine Master Realm, while the stronger ones were at the peak of the Divine Master Realm. It was especially so for those giant wolves at the peak of the Almighty level. They were too strong, and they relied on their powerful defenses to attack the Heaven Destroyer in a frenzy. The only way to force the Heaven Destroyer to defend with all its might was to defend it as it had done against the Heavenly Palace. However, these giant wolves were not like the ones in the Heavenly Palace. These giant wolves relied on their defensive power to attack crazily. After charging for a while, hundreds of giant wolves suddenly charged out from under the ground, charging out from under the feet of Lu Ming and the others. This time they were caught off guard. Dozens of divine masters were torn apart by the giant green wolves and became food in their stomachs. Moreover, the defense of the Heaven Destroyer was completely torn apart. It turned into a chaotic battle. A giant green wolf at the 5th level of the Divine Master Realm roared and charged towards Lu Ming. It was more than 10 meters tall, and it was like a small mountain pressing down on Lu Ming. Kill? Lu Ming shouted softly, and the God of War spear shot out like a bolt of lightning. The God of War spear pierced through the giant wolf's neck, piercing through it. A one-shot kill. Lu Ming pulled out the God of War spear and charged at another giant wolf. The God of War spear was a top-notch source-level divine weapon, and its tip was incomparably sharp. Back then the God of War spear had pierced through Yi Chu Tianji's source-level divine armor. From this, one could see just how sharp the God of War spear was. Although these giant green wolves had astonishing defensive power, they could not block the sharpness of the God of War spear. Another giant green wolf at the 6th level of the Divine Master realm was killed by Lu Ming's spear. Lu Ming held the God of Combat spear in his hand and went on a rampage. Every spear strike could kill a huge green wolf. In less than a minute, 6 giant green wolves had been killed by Lu Ming. However, the others did not have the same results as Lu Ming. They could not break through the defenses of the giant green wolves so easily. Over 500 giant green wolves were crazily attacking, and Heaven Destroyer's side had already suffered more than 100 casualties. The giant wolves at the peak of the Divine Master realm were especially powerful. A single peak Divine Master on Heaven Destroyer's side could not stop a single giant green wolf. At least 2 peak Divine Masters were needed to stop the giant green wolves. There were even fewer people who could kill the giant green wolves. There were only a few of them. These peak Divine Lord existences all possessed source-level divine weapons. Only source-level divine weapons could kill those peak Divine Lord giant wolves. However, there were too few people who could control source-level divine weapons. One must know that even among the Origin Realm experts, more than half of them did not have source-level divine weapons. Those who possessed source-level divine weapons at the Divine Master realm were all people with great luck who had found them in the ruins of the universe. Should I lend out a few? Lu Ming's mind rapidly turned. He had quite a few divine weapons on him. If he could lend them to the peak Divine Masters, they would definitely be able to increase their battle prowess. Just as Lu Ming was about to move, a gust of wind blew over. A giant green wolf knocked away a Heaven Destroyer expert and charged at Lu Ming with murderous intent. It was abnormally fast, and its claws were even sharper than divine blades as it swiped at Lu Ming's head. Unable to dodge in time, Lu Ming swung the War God's spear and swept it out. With a clang, the War God's spear collided with the giant green wolf's claws, erupting with a violent boom. Lu Ming's body shook violently as he involuntarily retreated. A giant wolf at the 9th layer of the Divine Master realm. Lu Ming's heart sank. Clearly, the 6 giant green wolves he had just killed had attracted the attention of a powerful giant wolf. The one that had attacked Lu Ming just now was a giant wolf at the 9th layer of the Divine Master realm. Whoa! That giant wolf roared and pounced on Lu Ming. Its huge claws scratched at Lu Ming, emitting an ear-piercing sound of something breaking through the air. Lu Ming could only use his full strength against a giant wolf at the 9th layer of the Divine Master realm. He did not have the energy to send out another source-level divine weapon. Bish! The War God's spear turned into a bolt of lightning as it stabbed toward the giant wolf's forehead, but it was blocked by the giant wolf's claws. Lu Ming's arm went numb from the impact and he retreated several steps. Chapter 4661. What powerful strength! Lu Ming felt his arm go numb and his blood churn. This giant azure wolf was shockingly strong, not at all weaker than a heavenly human of the same level. In truth, these primordial remnant beasts were all very strong, not weaker than a heavenly human of the same level. Previously, he felt that these primordial remnant beasts were not particularly strong, mainly because their defenses were so strong that he had neglected their strength. Being on par with a heavenly human of the same level was already standing at the apex of the primordial universe. In a head-on clash, the 9th level Divine Lord Azure Wolf could already suppress Lu Ming. The giant green wolf roared, spewing out heat waves from its mouth. With a leap, it continued to charge toward Lu Ming. Swish, swish, swish. Lu Ming brandished the War God's spear, thrusting out spear light as he fought with the giant wolf. Lu Ming now had fewer trump cards. Without his greatest trump card, the Human King right arm, he only had Origin Energy. However, he only had one move of Origin Energy. Although it was powerful, he could not use it carelessly. Lu Ming had to find the right opportunity to use it in order to kill in one blow. Whoa, whoa. Not far away, wolf howls could be heard as the attacks of the giant azure wolves became even more intense. Relying on their powerful defenses, they constantly pounced. Although Heaven Destroyer had 10 times the number of people compared to the giant azure wolves, there were not many experts who could kill the giant azure wolves. One had to be at least 2 levels higher than the giant azure wolves to be able to break through their defenses. This made it very difficult to kill the giant azure wolves above the 8th level of the Godlord realm. That one in the distance is the Wolf King. The wolf pack is usually under the control of the Wolf King. Only by killing the Wolf King can we force back the pack of wolves. The primordial divine spirit, lion, roared. Many people also saw a giant azure wolf standing on a branch of a giant tree not far away. This giant green wolf was entirely green, and its green fur seemed to be dancing with green flames. This giant wolf was clearly the Wolf King. Every time it roared, the giant wolves would madly attack. "I'll go kill him. Count me in." Immediately, 3 figures broke through the encirclement and charged toward the Wolf King. These 3 figures were all peak divine masters. The Wolf King wasn't afraid at all. It faced the 3 experts head-on. Its sharp claws clawed continuously, blocking the attacks of the 3 experts. The 3 masters exchanged more than 10 moves with the Wolf King, but there was no clear victor. This Wolf King's strength was astonishing. Although it hadn't reached the origin level, its battle prowess was much stronger than the other giant wolves at the peak of the almighty level. To kill the Wolf King, we need a source-grade weapon. "Tianxian, come with me." The lion roared as its body swelled up rapidly. It grew to a height of 1,000 feet as it charged at the Wolf King. Another expert of the 5th level of the Divine Master realm attacked the Wolf King together with Lion. Both of them were in control of soul-level divine weapons, so their battle prowess was stronger than the other peak divine masters. With the addition of 2 peak divine masters who wielded soul-grade divine weapons, they instantly had the upper hand. After a few moves, Lion struck the giant wolf with his soul-grade divine weapon, leaving a huge wound on the giant wolf's body. With the support of a peak divine master, the soul-grade divine weapon was enough to break through the giant wolf's defense. Peak divine masters had also condensed origin seeds. They had much more origin power than Lu Ming. When they activated their soul-grade divine weapons, their might was astonishing. Howl! The Wolf King was injured. It immediately roared and tried to summon the other giant wolves to help it. "Hold them back!" The members of Heaven Destroyer roared furiously. They outnumbered the giant wolves by 10 times. Although many of them couldn't break through the giant wolves' defense, they could still hold them back. They could even send the giant wolves tumbling out of their encirclement. Thousands of attacks rained down on the giant wolves. Although they didn't deal much damage, the giant wolves could forget about escaping. The 5 peak divine masters attacked with all their might. 3 without soul-grade divine weapons held the Wolf King back, while 2 with soul-grade divine weapons attacked. After a dozen moves, Lion finally seized the opportunity and cut off the Wolf King's head. Howl! With the death of the Wolf King, the other giant Saiyan wolves were in a mess. They howled and attacked randomly. After being beaten back a few times by the Heaven Exterminating Troop, the giant Saiyan wolves retreated and disappeared without a trace. Phew, many people heaved a sigh of relief. The primeval surviving species weren't easy to deal with. If they hadn't killed the Wolf King, they would have suffered greater losses. Even so, more than 50 divine masters had been killed in the previous wave. They were divine masters. Even if all the divine masters in the Heaven Exterminating Army were added together, including those who were busy or in seclusion, there would not be more than 6,000 of them. It was a huge loss for so many to die in one go. "Everyone, I think we should split up," a peak-level divine master expert shouted. The others nodded. They all understood the same thing. If all 5,000 of them moved together, they would be too big of a target. They could easily attract the primeval surviving species. Only by splitting up would they be less of a target. They could move more nimbly and easily avoid the primeval surviving species. "I suggest we split into small groups. Each group has no more than 10 people. We'll move separately and avoid the primeval surviving species. We'll head north and meet up at a certain location," Lion said. If they split up, even if they ran into powerful and invincible primeval surviving species, they would only lose a dozen people at most. However, if they moved together and ran into a large group of primeval surviving species, such as the wolf pack from before, and a few Origin Realm primeval surviving species, they would be in danger of being wiped out. "Alright, I agree. I agree too." The others nodded. "However, our main objective is to obtain the Human King's body. It's related to the outcome of the battle between us and the Heavenly Palace. It's of utmost importance. We can't afford to lose it. Lu Ming and she can control the Human King's body. They might play a key role in the end. I suggest we split up and have some top experts follow them to protect them. What do you think?" Lion continued. "I have no objections." "I have no objections either." The others nodded. Although it was much safer to follow experts, the others knew that the Human King's body was the key. If the Heavenly Palace obtained the complete Human King's body, the Heaven Destroyer would be destroyed. Lu Ming and she were indeed key figures. It was only right that they were given special protection. Lu Ming naturally had no objections. The others immediately split into groups. Most of them were in groups of 8 or 9. After that, they flew towards the north and disappeared into the vast forest. Usually, there would be at least one expert at the 7th layer of the Divine Master realm in each group. Chapter 4662. Lu Ming's group, including Lu Ming, had a total of 9 people. The other 8 were all peak Godlord experts. 2 of them even possessed soul-grade divine weapons. Lion was one of them. There were also 8 peak Godlord experts by Shi's side. 2 of them also possessed soul-grade divine weapons. In addition, there were many experts in Tang Jun's group as well. Tang Jun was Tang Feng's daughter, so they would naturally protect her. Lu Ming, take care. We'll meet up in the north. Tang Jun came to bid farewell to Lu Ming. You too. Lu Ming smiled. Afterward, Tang Jun followed her group and disappeared into the forest. Lu Ming, let's go as well. Lion said. Lu Ming nodded. Their group also set off. They first headed west for a while, then headed north. This forest was vast and boundless. They had around 5,000 people and they were split into over 500 small groups. They were scattered in the vast forest, like a small stone thrown into the sea, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. While they were moving forward, Lion and the other 7 experts secretly protected Lu Ming in the middle. Among them, the 2 fastest experts were scouting ahead. Once they discovered a powerful surviving species of the untainted land ahead, they would take a detour. Lu Ming was also happy to relax. With fewer people, their movements were much more nimble than before. Their speed had also increased by many times. They constantly flashed through the forest, leaving large areas behind them. Along the way, they would encounter primitive surviving species every once in a while. There were strong and weak primitive surviving species. The weak ones were equivalent to divine lords or divine emperors, while the stronger ones were divine lords. In just 3 days, Lu Ming's group had encountered over 100 divine lord primitive surviving species. As a matter of fact, they even came across 2 reciprocity primordial species, but they avoided them beforehand and took a detour. Primordial species at reciprocity all had their own territories. As long as they did not set foot in another's territory and took a detour, they would not pursue them. Along the way, Lu Ming and the others were secretly shocked. There were simply too many powerful great desolate remnant beasts on this continent. Just by traveling in a single direction, the 9 of them came across over 100 divine lord primordial species and 2 reciprocity primordial species. Coupled with the huge azure wolves they had encountered before, there were over 600 divine lord primordial species. This was definitely only a part of the continent. The number of remnant species at the Divine Master realm on this continent was absolutely shocking. Adding them all together, they might have more divine masters than the entire primitive universe. This was too shocking. Anyone who could control the Great Desolate Remnant here would be able to dominate the Great Desolate Universe. It was just a continent, yet there were so many powerful Great Desolate Remnant species. Then, how many experts were there in the Great Desolate Continent of the previous epoch? Divine Masters were everywhere and Origin were as numerous as dogs? That's not right. According to the records excavated from the ruins of the universe, even the Great Desolate Continent of the previous epoch did not have so many experts. It's impossible for Divine Masters to be everywhere. Lion shook his head. There were definitely many Divine Masters on the Great Desolate Continent. It was probably incalculable. However, they had only traveled for 3 days. As they had to be wary of powerful Great Desolate Remnant species, they did not move very quickly, nor did they travel very far. There were over 100 Divine Lord primordial species in this short distance. The density was just far too great. It had to be mentioned that the Great Desolate Continent of the previous epoch was shockingly vast. All the fragments of continents in the ruins of the universe and all the planets in the primitive universe were added together. Although this continent was vast, it was not as large as the 1,000-year battlefield. It was only a drop in the ocean compared to the complete Great Desolate Continent. Just how many experts were there in the Great Desolate Continent? This clearly did not match the records of the ancient records. Clearly, this continent is extraordinary. That's why it can give birth to so many powerful Great Desolate Remnant species in such a small area. Another peak Divine Master expert said. This made everyone's hearts even heavier. The more extraordinary this continent was, the more powerful the Great Desolate Remnant species would be, and the greater the pressure on them. There was even more uncertainty about the competition for the human king's body later. Later on, they would not only have to face the experts of the Heavenly Palace and Quasi-Saint tribe, but they might also have to face powerful Great Desolate Remnant species. This trip would probably be full of difficulties and dangers. Be careful. Suddenly, The voice of an expert who was scouting ahead rang in the ears of Lu Ming and the others. It was transmitted through telepathy and was full of solemnity. The hearts of Lu Ming and the others thumped. They immediately held their breaths and restrained their auras. Look ahead. A profound voice pointed ahead. There were about a dozen mountain peaks in front of them. They were extremely huge and very tall, extending all the way to the sky. The tallest mountain peak was at least 1,000,000 feet tall. However, this was not the most shocking thing. The most shocking thing was that there was a giant snake coiled around this mountain peak. The giant snake began to spiral from the bottom of the mountain and continued upward, wrapping itself around the highest peak of the mountain. Terrifying. It was a terrifying giant snake. Even though it was very far away, the aura emitted by this giant snake was still terrifying. Origin Realm. This giant snake was definitely in existence of the Origin Realm. It was extremely powerful. At this moment, a sharp cry rang out in the sky. The clouds were torn apart and another huge creature appeared. It was a huge white bird. Its entire body was snow white and covered in snow-white feathers. It was extremely huge, and when it spread its wings, it blotted out the sky. The huge bird swooped down and its two huge claws grabbed at the giant snake. The giant snake was not to be outdone. With a sharp cry, its huge body shot out like a spring and engaged in a great battle with the huge bird. Boom, 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 boom. Destructive energy swept out in all directions. The earth shook and ancient trees exploded. It was like the end of the world. Lu Ming and the others could not help but swallow their saliva. Two Origin Realm great desolate remnant species were fighting. This continent was really dangerous. Let's go. Lion transmitted. They did not dare to stay for long. They hurriedly made a detour and traveled in a different direction. Only when they could no longer hear the disturbance behind them did they let out a sigh of relief. The huge bird and snake from before were definitely not regular Origin Realm beings. They were even more powerful than regular Origin Realm beings. If they had been sucked in, they would have been done for. Fortunately, they had split up and scattered. If they had moved together with all 5,000 of them, they definitely would have been discovered and the situation would have been dire. They continued north. Although they came across a few great desolate remnant species in the next 2 days, they did not encounter any danger. Look, what's that? Suddenly, someone whispered. There was a sliver of excitement in his voice. Not far in front of them was a huge cliff. On a protruding rock on the cliff, they saw a strange little tree. Chapter 4663. It was a small, fire-red tree. It was very short, only half a meter tall, but it seemed very mystical. The tree glowed and there was actually a miniature tree above it. It was condensed from energy and seemed to be alive, constantly running around the tree. This is a source-level divine herb, Lion said. His voice was very excited, and his eyes shone with a scorching light. A source-level divine herb. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. As the name suggested, it was definitely a divine herb that was very useful to reciprocity cultivators. Lu Ming, if you want to increase your cultivation at reciprocity, you need to absorb and refine treasures that contain origin imprints. Source-level divine herbs contain origin imprints, and they contain a very high amount of essence. Even among treasures that contain origin imprints, they are one of the best. Knowing that Lu Ming did not know much about source-level divine herbs, Guemo explained in a timely manner. There are no source-level divine herbs in the current primitive universe. Even in the ruins of the universe they are extremely rare. I never thought I'd come across one here. Another peak god lord said. His eyes were also burning with desire. Source-level divine herbs were just too rare. The current primitive universe could not nurture them at all. The ruins of the universe had been severely damaged due to the war of the last epoch. The laws and mysteries within them were in chaos, so it was very difficult for them to nurture source-level divine weapons. Even though the laws and mysteries of the universe had become more orderly in the past few dozen stellar years, they could not nurture such a treasure immediately. It was not that they did not exist in the vast ruins of the universe, but they were extremely rare. Very few people could obtain them. Actually, even if someone obtained one, they would not take it out because it was just too precious. If an Origin Realm cultivator consumed it, it would be extremely effective in increasing their cultivation. If a peak god lord consumed it, their chances of breaking through to reciprocity would be greatly increased as well. It was no wonder that Lion and the others were so passionate about it. It was just too tempting. Even if each of them were given a leaf, it would be of great help to them in breaking through to reciprocity. However, they did not dare to act rashly because there was a primordial remnant on the protruding rock. It was a huge golden eagle. It was completely golden, as if it had been forged from gold. It was extremely similar to a golden-winged roc. The golden eagle lay lazily around the small tree, inhaling and exhaling the multicolored light emitted from the small tree. "I wonder what cultivation level this golden condor has?" Someone whispered. "I don't know. It's too far away. I can't sense it." Lion shook his head. In the end, they decided to hide in the dark and observe carefully to see what cultivation level the golden condor was at. Or they would wait until the golden condor left before they made their move. The golden condor had to go out to look for food. That would be their chance. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, they waited for 5 days. 5 days later, the golden condor finally made its move. It stood up, its body emitting a golden glow. A few rays of light shot out from its mouth and landed around the small tree. In the next moment, the sapling disappeared. It was actually hidden. Then, the golden condor flapped its wings and soared into the sky, rushing into the distance. "So it's the peak of the Divine Master Realm." The eyes of Lion and the others flickered. When the golden condor took off, they finally sensed what level of cultivation the golden condor was at. It was at the peak of the Divine Master Realm. However, the golden condor gave off a very strong sense of oppression. It was probably not an ordinary peak of the Divine Master Realm. In the blink of an eye, the golden condor disappeared into the distance without a trace. "Let's make our move." Lion showed a hint of joy. The group of 9 concealed their auras and quickly rushed toward the cliff. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. They arrived at the protruding rock. From afar, the protruding rock did not look very big. In fact, it was very large and spacious. There was a huge cave near the cliff. There were a few golden feathers scattered in the cave. It was obviously where the golden condor lived. However, the group only glanced around casually before their eyes fell on the spot where the sapling was. They gathered their energy in their eyes and observed carefully. "How is it?" Lion asked. "It's just a simple formation. It's easy to break," a skinny old man said. This old man was from the World Turtle clan and was proficient in rune formations. "Then let's hurry up. If we delay any longer, we might be discovered by the golden condor," another person urged. The old man from the World Turtle clan nodded and waved his hands. A large number of runes spread out and shrouded the transparent void in front of them. When the void was shrouded by the runes, a golden light shield suddenly appeared in the transparent void. They could see that the soul-level divine herb was shining inside the golden light shield. At this time, 9 figures came from a forest in the distance. They came from afar and stopped in the branches of a big tree. They immediately saw Lu Ming and the others. "It's the traitors." Lu Ming. A few cold voices sounded. These 9 figures were all from the Heavenly Human clan. One of the young men was Lu Ming's old rival, Yi Qiuxian. The other 8 Heavenly Human clan members were all people on par with the Lord of Heaven. Obviously, the Heavenly Palace had adopted the same plan as the Heaven Destroyer. They split up and acted separately. In addition, Yi Qiuxian's identity was not to be underestimated. He was a peerless genius of the Heavenly Human clan and could activate the power of the Human King's body. Therefore, the Heavenly Palace had sent 8 top experts to protect Yi Qiuxian. They had just arrived from afar and saw Lu Ming and the others. As soon as he saw Lu Ming, Yi Qiuxian's eyes were filled with cold, murderous intent. "That's an soul-level divine weapon." Then, one of the Lord of Heaven saw the soul-level divine herb and his eyes were filled with greed. "It's really an soul-level divine weapon. Young Master Qiuxian, should we attack?" One of the Lord of Heaven asked. "Don't worry. Their strength is not inferior to ours. If we attack recklessly, both sides will suffer. We can ambush them in the dark and attack suddenly. We can only kill 1 or 2 of their experts before we can eliminate them," Yi Qiuxian said. "Young Master Qiuxian is right." The others nodded and withdrew their auras. "That's..." Suddenly Yi Qiuxian and the others saw a golden light spot in the distance that was flying towards them rapidly. No, to be precise, it was flying towards Lu Ming and the others at the cliff. "Ah, the heavens are on my side. Let's just wait and take advantage of the situation." Yi Qiuxian was overjoyed. At the same time, Lu Ming and the others were also shocked. They had also noticed the golden light spot. It was obviously the golden eagle that had flown away previously. They did not expect it to return so quickly. Or could it be that the golden eagle would sense it as soon as they touched the formation set up by the other party? That was probably the case. Although the concealment formation set up by the golden eagle was simple and crude, it would sense it as soon as they touched it and come back quickly. Chapter 46-64. Break the array. Lion roared. His muscles bulged and his body swelled to a height of 100 feet. He was ready to fight. Break it. The old man of the world divine turtle shouted as more runes appeared from his hands. These runes were like small snakes, desperately drilling into the light shield. Hurry up. Didn't you say it's easy to break? Lion roared. Even if it's easy to break, it will take time. It hasn't even been a minute. The world turtle elder replied. Lion was speechless. Yes, breaking an array usually took at least a few hours or even a few days. Some arrays could take many years to break. It had been less than a minute and it looked like it was about to break. It was indeed easy. However, the golden condor was about to arrive. There was a loud bang. The light shield was finally broken, and the source-level divine weapon was completely revealed. The golden condor let out a sharp screech and its eyes were full of anger. It flapped its wings and dozens of golden sword lights flew out of its wings, attacking Lu Ming and the others. Hurry up and dig out the source-level divine medicine. We'll deal with this golden condor. Lion shouted. He took a step forward and rushed out. He brandished the saber in his hand and slashed out dozens of saber lights, which collided with the dozens of golden lights. A series of collision sounds were heard. The saber lights and sword lights dissipated, but the golden condor did not stop. It quickly pounced on Lion, and its sharp claws reached for Lion's head. Lion slashed with all his might. Clang. The saber hit the golden condor's sharp claws, and there was a sound of metal clashing. Sparks flew everywhere. The next moment, Lion's expression changed drastically. Its huge body shook violently and it was thrown backward. It smashed into the cliff wall, causing the entire cliff to shake. The golden condor wanted to continue attacking and kill Lion in one go, but the other experts had already made their move. The 6-peak Divine Lord experts attacked the golden condor together, 6 sharp attacks aimed at 6 different parts of the golden condor. The golden condor did not continue to chase Lion. Its wings swept out like golden sabers, and all the attacks in front of it were destroyed. As for the other 3 attacks, they landed on its back. The golden condor's body shook and it was sent flying. However, it was not injured at all. It was blocked by its thick feathers. So strong. Lu Ming's heart trembled. The strength of this golden condor was truly astonishing. Even the lion was sent flying with a single strike. One must know that Lion had used his source-level divine weapon earlier, but he had failed to sever the golden condor's sharp claws. Although this golden eagle only had the cultivation of a peak divine master, its strength far surpassed that of an ordinary peak divine master. It was no wonder that he could monopolize a source-level divine herb and the other remnant beasts of the primordial era did not dare to fight over it. And with such a delay, the old man of the world turtle had completely dug out the origin-level divine medicine, including the roots, and put it into his storage ring. Seeing that the source-level elixir had been dug out, the golden condor let out a sharp screech and madly pounced towards the world turtle elder. However, Lion and the others had already made their move. The 7 experts surrounded the golden condor. The old man of the world turtle stood beside Lu Ming and did not make a move. Obviously he was protecting Lu Ming. Senior, you should attack as well. Don't worry about me. Lu Ming said. Although he could not interfere in such a battle, he could still protect himself. It's fine. The 7 of them are enough to deal with this golden condor. The old man of the world turtle elder said. The 7 experts joined forces, and 2 of them had source-level divine weapons. Their strength was indeed very strong and they were able to suppress the golden condor. However, the golden condor's defense was too amazing. They could not kill the golden condor in a short time. The defense of the thick feathers was too amazing. Even source-level divine weapons could not penetrate the thick feathers. You guys hold it back. The 2 of us will attack its vital points. Lion roared. The golden condor was not without weaknesses. Like the eyes and neck of the golden condor. Although the golden condor's neck was also covered with feathers, the feathers were just fluff. It was relatively soft and its defense was much weaker. However, the golden eagle used its sharp claws and wings to cover its eyes and neck tightly. Their attacks were unable to be effective. Immediately, the 5 experts without source-level divine weapons used all their strength to pin down the golden condor. They attacked its wings and claws to create flaws in its defense. Lion and another expert with a source-level divine weapon attacked the golden condor's eyes and neck with all their strength. After a dozen moves, Lion finally seized the opportunity and slashed the golden condor's neck. The source-level divine weapon's power played a role. It cut through the thick layer of feathers and left a deep wound on the golden condor's neck that went straight to the bone. Feathers flew and blood flowed. It's effective. Lion and the other's eyes lit up. Sure enough, the source-level divine weapon could cut through the feathers on the golden condor's neck and cause serious damage to the golden condor. With 2 more attacks like this, the golden condor's head would definitely be cut off. Caw. The golden condor was injured and went completely crazy. Its body emitted a dazzling golden light. Many feathers on its wings flew out and turned into sharp swords, stabbing at the 7 experts. There were at least hundreds of sword lights that repelled the 7 experts all at once. After repelling the 7 experts, the golden condor screamed and flapped its wings rapidly, pouncing on Lion. A pair of sharp claws grabbed at Lion at an astonishing speed. Lion was repelled by the sword light. He couldn't dodge in time and could only fight back. But at the critical moment he couldn't use 100% of his strength and was caught by one of the golden condor's claws. Blood splattered. A small part of Lion's left body was torn off. It was a horrible sight. Lion let out an angry roar and retreated. Block it. The other experts also reacted. They rushed over and launched a series of attacks. Only then did they block the golden condor's attack and save Lion's life. Not good. The old man of the world turtle finally couldn't stand it anymore. He waved his hand and 12 formation flags appeared in the void. The formation flags shone brightly and countless runes filled the air. These runes intertwined together, forming a huge chain that wrapped around the golden condor. At the same time, the old man of the world turtle quickly formed seals with both hands. More rune arrays appeared around him. All of them were entrapment arrays. All of them shrouded the golden condor. Caw caw caw, the golden condor kept screeching and struggling crazily. Those rune arrays trembled violently and kept exploding. Let's attack together. The old man of the world turtle roared. In fact, there was no need for him to roar. The others also attacked. All kinds of attacks were constantly directed at the golden condor. With so many experts in the array of the old man of the world turtle, the golden condor was finally trapped and its movements became slow. Chapter 46-65. The golden condor was enveloped by layers of formations. Coupled with the attacks of the other 6 experts, the golden condor's body was covered in runes and its movements began to slow down. Kill? Lion roared. Ignoring his injuries, he wielded his saber with one hand and charged forward. Poof! The saber landed on the golden condor's neck, on the wound that had been left behind earlier. More than half of the golden condor's neck had been cut off. More than half of the bones in its neck had been broken. Its entire head had almost been chopped off. The golden condor went berserk and struggled madly. The runes continued to explode as it struggled to break free. Kill? Lion roared again and slashed down with his saber. This time, the golden condor's head was completely cut off. With its head cut off and its soul destroyed, the golden condor stopped struggling. Its aura rapidly dissipated as it died. Huff, huff, huff. The 8 experts including Lion were constantly panting. The golden condor was just too powerful. It had far surpassed the strength of an ordinary peak god lord. Although it was not comparable to the origin realm, it was definitely an invincible existence among peak god lords. The 8 of them were peak god lords, and 2 of them had even possessed source-grade divine weapons. They had paid a heavy price to kill it. Even the lion was heavily injured. Lion took out a few divine pills and swallowed them to heal his injuries. It's a pity that the golden condor did not manage to kill 1 or 2 people. Not far away, a lord of heaven sighed. Although it did not manage to kill 1 or 2 people, they have expended a lot of energy to deal with the golden condor. That primordial god has also been heavily injured and his strength has been greatly reduced. Our strength has already far surpassed theirs. It's time for us to attack, Yi Qiuxin said coldly. Yi Qiuxin and the 8 Lord of Heaven level experts concealed their auras and quietly approached Lu Ming's group. On the other side, Lion and the others had collected the golden condor's corpse and were preparing to leave. The golden condor's entire body was a treasure. They naturally could not let it go to waste. At this moment, Lu Ming suddenly felt goosebumps all over his body. He felt an inexplicable sense of danger. Everyone be careful. There's danger. Lu Ming roared. Lion and the others were also very alert. They immediately reacted and scanned their surroundings. Damn it, attack! Yi Qiuxin shouted. Swish, swish. 8 experts at the level of the Lord of Heaven immediately rushed over. Before they arrived, 8 terrifying attacks were already flying towards Lu Ming and the others. It's the heavenly human tribe. Defend. The old man of the world turtle roared and waved his hand. A huge turtle shell appeared in the sky and blocked the attack. The others also moved to block the attack. However, Lion was not in peak condition. The Golden Condor's previous attack had seriously injured him. Although he had unleashed his full strength and killed the Golden Condor with 2 consecutive strikes, he had also exhausted the last of his strength. At this time, although he had blocked the opponent's attack, he kept retreating. Gather together and form a defense. The old man of the world turtle roared. With a wave of his hand, more than 30 array flags flew out and formed a huge defensive array. The others also used their defensive secret techniques. They surrounded Lu Ming and Lion in the middle. As soon as the other party attacked, they could feel that the strength of the heavenly human tribe was very shocking. All 8 of them were at the level of the Lord of Heaven. They were not people that Lu Ming could deal with. Lion was also seriously injured and could not deal with them. Kill. The 8 experts at the level of the Lord of Heaven surrounded Lu Ming and the others. The supreme power of heaven erupted and turned into a terrifying destructive force, attacking Lu Ming and the others. However, the experts on the Heaven Destroyer's side only defended and did not attack. For a time they blocked the attacks of the other party. Attack continued to attack. They are exhausted from the battle with the Golden Condor. Sooner or later they will not be able to hold on. Ichioshin walked through the air and stood high up in the sky as he shouted. Swish, swish. The 8 experts at the level of the Lord of Heaven attacked with all their strength. Among the 8 experts at the level of the Lord of Heaven, 2 of them had source-level divine weapons. The attacks of these 2 were the most terrifying and made the defense of the Heaven Destroyer in danger. Lu Ming, this will be your burial ground. Ichioshin said coldly. Ichioshin, you only know how to hide in the dark and attack when we are injured. Is this the style of the top genius of the heavenly human tribe? Lu Ming retorted. Lu Ming, I can give you a chance. Come out and fight me alone. This time I will not lose. I will kill you. Ichioshin was full of confidence. Of course, Lu Ming would not go out and fight Ichioshin alone. If he went out, who knew if the Lord of Heaven would attack him directly? The Heaven Destroyer's side defended with all their strength while the Heavenly Palace's side attacked with all their might, trying to break the defense of the Heaven Destroyer. In the blink of an eye, dozens of moves had passed. The defense of the Heaven Destroyer became a little unstable and was almost broken through several times. After all, they had used all their strength in the battle with the Golden Condor and had lost a lot of energy. In addition, Lion was seriously injured and lost a powerful combat force. The Heavenly Palace had 2 Lord of Heaven who had source-level divine weapons. The gap between them was not small. As time passed, the gap between them would be more obvious. Let's break out. Lion roared. Although he was trying his best to heal his injuries, the time was too short and his recovery was limited. Charge. They rushed in one direction trying to break out. However, when they turned their defense into offense, the defense was naturally weakened. Break for me. One of the Lord of Heaven who had a source-level divine weapon seized the opportunity and stabbed his sword with all his strength. In an instant it broke through 3 layers of defense. The sharp sword light penetrated the shoulder of one of the Heaven Destroyer's experts. This expert could not help but retreat continuously. The defense formation was torn apart. Kill. The other Lord of Heaven of the Heavenly Palace seized the opportunity and attacked the torn gap with terrifying attacks. Block it. The Heaven Destroyer wanted to resist, but it was too late. The defense was completely torn apart, and they couldn't help but retreat again and again. The distance between each other was pulled apart. Kill. One of the Lord of Heaven targeted an expert of the Heaven Destroyer and attacked him. The 2 exchanged a few moves in a row and had already left the battlefield and killed their way to a distance. The other Lord of Heaven also attacked, and in the blink of an eye, it became a chaotic battle. Lu Ming die. Several Lord of Heaven stared at Lu Ming and wanted to kill Lu Ming. Lu Ming, the defense has been broken, we can only fight for ourselves. Seize the opportunity to escape. We will hold these people back. The powerhouse of the world turtle roared. He continuously made seals and turned into a chain that wrapped around Lu Ming. Yes, we will hold them back. Lu Ming, you escape and meet up with the others in the north. Lion spoke as well. He swallowed several divine pills in succession, erupting with his remaining strength. With a loud roar, his body rapidly swelled up, transforming into an incomparably gigantic lion-like beast. This was his true form. Chapter 4666. Lion reverted to his original form. He held the saber in one of his claws and slashed away several attacks. The old man with the turtle took the opportunity to fling Lu Ming out and send him flying into the distance. I'm too weak. Lu Ming clenched his fists tightly and his bones cracked. His heart was filled with anger and he felt extremely sullen. Whether it was the battle with the Golden Condor or the battle with the Heavenly Palace experts, he couldn't interfere. In short, he was too weak. If he interfered, he would only be a hindrance. Not only would it be useless, but it would also harm Lion and the others. After the old man of the world turtle threw Lu Ming out, the few lords of heaven wanted to chase after Lu Ming. However, they were held back by Lion, the old man of the world turtle, and the others. Lu Ming had a forbidden body and his future was limitless. Moreover, he was crucial in obtaining the human king's body. Even if they had to die, they couldn't let anything happen to Lu Ming. Lu Ming, don't even think about leaving. Yi Qiuxin had been staring at Lu Ming. When he saw Lu Ming being flung away, Yi Qiuxin unleashed all his strength and chased after Lu Ming. The World Turtle Elder and the others couldn't stop Yi Qiuxin. It was already good enough that they could hold back the Lord of Heaven. Lu Ming was flung tens of thousands of miles away before he could stabilize himself. However, Yi Qiuxin caught up with him immediately. Lu Ming, don't leave if you have the guts. Fight with me. Yi Qiuxin roared. His speed was extremely fast and he traveled tens of thousands of miles in an instant. Do you think I'm afraid of you? If you want to fight, let's fight. Lu Ming's voice was filled with killing intent. He stopped and held the war god's spear in his hand as he faced Yi Qiuxin. He had been holding back his anger for a long time and had nowhere to vent it. He wasn't a match for the Lord of Heaven. However, why would he be afraid of Yi Qiuxin? Buzz. The war god's spear vibrated and turned into a dazzling spear light, thrusting toward Yi Qiuxin. Good timing. When Yi Qiuxin saw that Lu Ming was not trying to escape, he was overjoyed. He bellowed out and 4 types of heaven's powers appeared. They turned into 4 beams of sword light that slashed out at Lu Ming. Lu Ming's palm shook and the war god's spear vibrated once more. The spear light transformed into 4 beams and collided with Yi Qiuxin's 4 sword beams. Boom, 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 boom. 4 consecutive booming sounds rang out as the spear light and the sword light disappeared at the same time. However, Lu Ming's body shook violently, and he couldn't help but madly retreat. The power of a 6th-tier divine master is indeed powerful. Lu Ming muttered. Yi Qiuxin's cultivation level was 1 level higher than his. In a head-on clash, Yi Qiuxin was at a disadvantage. Lu Ming, I will kill you today. Yi Qiuxin stepped in the air, his white robes fluttering in the wind like an immortal descending to the mortal world. Perfect heaven's energy appeared, and 4 swords of different colors floated around him, their sword intent soaring to the heavens. Is that so? Lu Ming sneered and suddenly threw out the war god's spear in his hand. The war god's spear pierced towards Yi Qiuxin like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, Lu Ming's hands rapidly formed seals, unleashing the desolation style. A continent appeared above Yi Qiuxin's head, pressing down on him. Rumble. Lu Ming's desolation style was getting more and more powerful. Before it even landed, the void was already exploding. Lu Ming, this move of yours is useless against me. Sword formation activate. Yi Qiuxin roared, and the 4 swords around him continued to revolve, turning into a powerful sword formation. Sword light soared to the sky, slashing forward and above. With a loud clang, the war god's spear was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. It was struck by the sword light continuously, shaking violently and flying back. At the same time, even more sword light bombarded the desolation continent, tearing it apart. Lu Ming grabbed the war god's spear that was flying back and unleashed the sky-breaking style, becoming one with the spear and piercing towards Yi Qiuxin. He held the spear with one hand, while the other hand continued to condense the desolation continent, blasting it towards Yi Qiuxin. However, the sword array controlled by Yi Qiuxin was extremely powerful. Dense sword gleams burst forth continuously. Lu Ming broke through more than 10 sword auras consecutively. However, his body shook violently and he retreated rapidly. There were several wounds on his arms. They had been cut open by the sword auras. One had to admit that Yi Qiuxin's combat strength was really strong. Back in the Taishang Immortal City battle, the 2 of them were at the same level. Although Lu Ming defeated Yi Qiuxin, it wasn't an easy victory. The 2 of them exchanged many moves before the outcome was decided. In a battle of the same level, Yi Qiuxin wasn't much weaker than Lu Ming. Now that his cultivation was 1 level higher than Lu Ming, it was naturally difficult for Lu Ming to match him. After sending Lu Ming flying with the sword formation, Yi Qiuxian charged towards Lu Ming with boundless sword light. The sword chi whistled, stabbing towards Lu Ming. This was because the sword chi was formed by the perfect power of heaven. Every ray of sword chi was extremely powerful. Lu Ming brandished the war god's spear and attacked with all his might. In an instant, hundreds of spear lights were shot out, but they still couldn't block the sword chi. Lu Ming, let me help you. At this moment, Qiuqiu opened its mouth and rushed out, transforming into a huge halberd. It slashed out, slashing at the sword chi that filled the sky. With Qiuqiu's help, the pressure on Lu Ming was greatly reduced. He finally managed to block Yi Qiuxian's attack. However, the result was that both he and Qiuqiu were sent flying at the same time. This guy's strength is really shocking. If I hadn't broken through, I wouldn't have been able to block it, Qiuqiu muttered. That's right, Qiuqiu was now a 5th-tier Divine Master. When it was a 4th-tier Divine Master, Qiuqiu had swallowed 2 semi-finished source-level Divine Weapons. Later on, Lu Ming gave Qiuqiu 3 damaged source-level Divine Weapons to swallow. With so many semi-finished and damaged source-level Divine Weapons, coupled with the refinement during this period, Qiuqiu had finally broken through, reaching the 5th tier from the 4th-tier Divine Master realm. Moreover, it was at the peak of the 5th-tier Divine Master realm. At the peak of the 5th-tier Divine Master realm, Qiuqiu's fighting strength was extremely shocking. After all, it could evolve the attack of a source-level Divine Weapon. Qiuqiu, let's attack first and confuse him. Then, you seize the opportunity to use an illusory formation to affect him. I'll use my strongest attack, Lu Ming transmitted to Qiuqiu. Lu Ming still had a trump card, which was the power of origin. However, origin energy could only be used once. Thus, it had to be used at the most critical moment. The mirror that Qiuqiu had transformed into could shoot out a beam of light and had the effect of an illusory formation. As long as it affected Yi Qiuxian, it would be the time for him to use his strongest attack. Alright, Qiuqiu replied. Instead of retreating, the two of them advanced and joined forces to attack Yi Qiuxian. Qiuqiu transformed into a war halberd. It was huge like a mountain range and constantly hacked at Yi Qiuxian. Lu Ming, on the other hand, used the sky-splitting form and the desolation form to attack. In an instant, he had exchanged more than a dozen blows with Yi Qiuxian. Qiuqiu, now's the time, Lu Ming transmitted to Qiuqiu. Qiuqiu immediately transformed into a mirror and shot out a beam of light. This beam of light directly enveloped Yi Qiuxian. Yi Qiuxian's gaze became sluggish. Swish! How could Lu Ming miss this opportunity? He used the sky-splitting form and turned into a beam of spear light that pierced toward Yi Qiuxian's forehead. Chapter 46-67. Lu Ming performed the sky-breaking technique and became one with his spear as he stabbed towards Yi Qiuxian's forehead. He was about to reach it. Break! Yi Qiuxian roared as the perfect power of the heavens surged out of his body like a tidal wave, instantly shattering Qiuqiu's light beam. Kill! Yi Qiuxian roared as his sword chi soared into the sky. The 4-colored battle swords merged into one and slashed towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming's pupils constricted as he forcibly stopped his attack. He performed the greater teleportation technique and moved to the side to avoid the sword. Qiuqiu also quickly retreated and flew to Lu Ming's side. Lu Ming, I didn't expect the opponent to be so powerful to be able to break through my illusion so quickly, Qiuqiu said regretfully. The perfect power of the heavens is indeed powerful and cannot be underestimated, Lu Ming said. He could tell that Yi Qiuxian had relied on the perfect power of the heavens to break through Qiuqiu's illusion so quickly. In addition, Yi Qiuxian's cultivation was one level higher than Qiuqiu's and his willpower was extremely strong. That was why he could break through Qiuqiu's illusion in an instant. Lu Ming, you have succeeded in infuriating me, Yi Qiuxian said coldly as the killing intent in his eyes was extremely strong. In fact, he felt a lingering fear in his heart. Just now, if he had been a little slower, he would have been hit by Lu Ming. It was extremely dangerous to be hit in such a situation. He had almost lost again. It was unforgivable. He grabbed at the air and a purple-gold battle sword appeared in Yi Qiuxian's hand. Source-level weapon. Without a doubt, it was an source-level weapon. Previously, Yi Qiuxian had not used an source-level weapon. The main reason was that Yi Qiuxian's sword formation was not suitable for an source-level weapon. Unless Yi Qiuxian could gather 4 source-level weapon battle swords and combine them with his sword formation, then the power would be terrifying. But how could it be so easy to gather 4 source-level weapon battle swords? Lu Ming, I'll let you experience the true power of perfect heaven's energy, Yi Qiuxian coldly spoke. The four four-colored battle swords actually gathered towards the source-grade divine weapon battle sword, showing signs of fusing into one. This was what Yi Qiuxian had learned from the Yi Immortal during this period of time. His talent was unparalleled and he was exceptionally intelligent. With just a few pointers from the Yi Immortal, his use of the perfect power of heaven had reached a whole new level. Whoosh! Yi Qiuxian's body was like a bolt of lightning as he dashed towards Lu Ming. As he slashed out with his sword, a shocking sword light burst out towards Lu Ming with extreme speed. Lu Ming struck out with his palm, activating the primal desolation style. A huge continent appeared in front of him, blocking his path. However, the sword light slashed down, splitting the continent into two halves. The sword light did not stop there, continuing to slash towards Lu Ming. Heaven Breaker. Lu Ming let out a long howl, displaying the heaven-breaking style. At the same time, Qiuqiu also attacked with all his might. However, even if the two of them worked together, it was still not enough. Lu Ming and Qiuqiu were both sent flying tens of thousands of miles away. Lu Ming spat out a mouthful of blood. His arm was filled with numerous wounds as blood flowed continuously. The previous sword strike had injured him quite badly. "Qiuqiu, are you all right?" Lu Ming asked. "I'm fine, Lu Ming. We can't fight head-on. We still have to prioritize defense." Qiuqiu replied and dashed towards Lu Ming. At this moment, Yi Qiuxian's second sword strike had also arrived. After sending Lu Ming flying with his first strike, he immediately attacked with his second strike. He became one with his sword and pierced towards Lu Ming. However, Qiuqiu had also reached Lu Ming's body, turning into an armor that covered Lu Ming's entire body. On the other hand, Lu Ming brandished his battle god spear and swept it out. With a loud clang, Lu Ming and Yi Qiuxian exchanged blows. His arm shook violently and his bones broke. The battle god spear almost flew out. "Die!" Yi Qiuxian shouted coldly. His battle sword slashed down on Lu Ming's body again. With a loud clang, Lu Ming's body retreated rapidly. However, Yi Qiuxian did not manage to break through Lu Ming's defense. The armor that Qiuqiu had transformed into was the source-level armor that he had devoured. The battle sword in Yi Qiuxian's hand was not of a higher grade than the battle god spear. Naturally, it would not be able to break through. "Yi Qiuxian, is this all you've got?" Lu Ming sneered sarcastically. "Humph, do you think hiding in your turtle shell is of any use? Watch me break your turtle shell." Yi Qiuxian snorted coldly. He pushed his perfect heaven's force to the limit and poured it into his source-level sword before swinging it at Lu Ming again. This time Lu Ming did not try to dodge or block. He allowed Yi Qiuxian's sword to strike him. With a loud clang, sparks flew everywhere. Lu Ming was sent flying by the powerful impact. However, the armor that Qiuqiu had transformed into did not break. Instead, it deflected Yi Qiuxian's combat sword. The armor that Qiuqiu had transformed into was Yi Qiu Tianji's source-level armor. It was of a similar grade to Yi Qiuxian's sword. Yi Qiuxian could not break through it at all. Of course, it would be different if an Origin Realm expert wielding a source-level armor. Breaking through the armor that Qiuqiu had transformed into would be a piece of cake. Unfortunately, Yi Qiuxian did not possess the strength to do so. "Lu Ming, you can only rely on a metallic life form. What kind of ability is that? If you have the guts, fight me head-on." Yi Qiuxian roared. "You have the nerve to say that when you want to fight me with a cultivation that's one level higher than mine. If you have the ability, fight me at the same level." Lu Ming sneered in response. Yi Qiuxian was speechless. His face sank. Through the exchange of blows earlier, he learned a cruel truth. That was, he was no match for Lu Ming even if they were of the same level. This made him extremely displeased. "It's enough that I'm invincible among the younger generation. Lu Ming, die." Yi Qiuxian roared in his heart. He swung his sword at Lu Ming again. However, this strike tore through space and produced a terrifying whistle. It was even more powerful than before. "Oh no, it's origin energy." Lu Ming immediately sensed it. Yi Qiuxian had also condensed an origin energy seed. Although he could not compare to Lu Ming, he could still unleash an attack. Combined with a source-level weapon, its power was extremely shocking. "It's just one move. I can block it." Qiuqiu's response made Lu Ming relax. Clang. In the next moment, Yi Qiuxian's battle sword continued to slash at Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming's body flew out like a cannonball and crashed into the cliff in the distance. A violent explosion erupted and a huge hole was formed in the cliff. However, he managed to block it in the end. There was only a mark on the armor that Qiuqiu had turned into. It was not broken. "Damn it!" Yi Qiuxian roared. He had already used all his means but still could not break through Lu Ming's defense. With a bang, Lu Ming rushed out of the hole in the cliff and charged at Yi Qiuxian at an extremely fast speed. "Qiu illusion!" Lu Ming shouted. "Have a taste of my strongest move." Qiu shouted and flew out from Lu Ming's body and turned into a mirror. Lu Ming was about to launch his counterattack. Yi Qiuxian had used all his strength to attack Lu Ming just now. Especially just now, he had used all his origin energy and perfect heaven's power to activate the source-level weapon. This was very energy-consuming. Now Yi Qiuxian was in a weakened state. Lu Ming was waiting for this opportunity. Chapter 46-68. Qiu turned into a mirror and shot out a beam of light that shrouded Yi Qiuxian within. Yi Qiuxian's eyes fell into a daze. Swoosh! Lu Ming attacked with all his might. He unleashed the sky-breaking form and became one with his spear. He turned into a dazzling spear light that pierced towards Yi Qiuxian's forehead. This time Yi Qiuxian did not manage to break free from Qiu's illusion. Previously, Yi Qiuxian was in his peak condition and could break free from the illusion with his perfect power. However, this time he did not react even when Lu Ming's spear light was nearing him. The sharp spear light pierced Yi Qiuxian's forehead. However, just as the spear tip pierced the skin between Yi Qiuxian's eyebrows, dense runes suddenly appeared. These runes were like a net that intertwined together to form a strong defense that blocked Lu Ming's attack. The strong impact also woke Yi Qiuxian up completely. "Lu Ming!" Yi Qiuxian roared and wanted to attack with all his might. Explode! Lu Ming roared and his origin energy erupted. Previously, Lu Ming wanted to attack with his origin energy. However, because Yi Qiuxian quickly broke free from Qiu, Lu Ming stopped in time and did not use his origin energy. If he didn't use it now, when would he? The origin energy surged into the War God Spear and exploded, activating a trace of the War God Spear's power. Lu Ming's attack reached its peak. A terrifying power erupted from the War God Spear's tip, causing the runes in between Yi Qiuxian's eyebrows to tremble violently. Some small cracks appeared on it. However, in the end he was not pierced through. The powerful impact caused Yi Qiuxian's body to explosively retreat several thousand miles. Only then did he manage to stabilize himself. However, he felt dizzy and his vision darkened. Although the attack just now had been blocked, the powerful impact on his head still had a great impact on him. Swoosh! Just as Yi Qiuxian stabilized himself, Lu Ming's attack had arrived. Lu Ming would not miss such a good opportunity to kill him while he was down. Whoosh! The War God Spear pierced towards Yi Qiuxian's forehead once more. However, this attack did not contain any source energy. Thus, it was blocked by the runes on Yi Qiuxian's forehead. Yi Qiuxian's body was once again sent flying by the powerful impact. As expected, these guys all have life-saving treasures. Lu Ming snorted coldly in his heart. Yi Qiuxian also possessed a life-saving treasure that the master of the Heavenly Palace had planted in him, allowing him to block an attack from a reciprocity expert. Yi Qiuxian also had a life-saving treasure. Although it was not as strong as Yi Qiuxian's, it was still very shocking. It was not something that Lu Ming could break. However, Lu Ming would not give up so easily. He executed the Greater Aurora technique and in a flash, he quickly caught up with Yi Qiuxian and swept out with his spear. This time around they were not attacking Yi Qiuxian's head. Instead they were attacking his body. His glabella was protected. Could it be that his body was protected as well? As expected, it really was protected. When Lu Ming's spear was about to strike Yi Qiuxian's body, the runes on Yi Qiuxian's forehead rapidly expanded and enveloped his entire body. Boom! The War God's spear was blocked by the runes when it struck Yi Qiuxian's body. However, Lu Ming immediately discovered that the runes that enveloped Yi Qiuxian's body were much weaker than the runes on his forehead. Their defenses were much weaker as well. When the War God's spear struck them, the runes began to shake violently, as if they were about to collapse at any time. A powerful force directly seeped into the runes and struck Yi Qiuxian's body. With a bang, Yi Qiuxian was blown several thousand kilometers away once more. This time he was no longer unscathed. Many parts of his body had exploded and several dozen of his bones had been broken. In particular, the place where the War God's spear had struck had almost been pierced through. If it were not for the defense of the runes, Yi Qiuxian's body would have been reduced to mush. The intense pain also woke Yi Qiuxian up from his stupor. "Arg! Lu Ming, I'll kill you!" Yi Qiuxian roared. "Yi Qiuxian, to think that you would bring along a life-saving treasure when you're out adventuring. You're indeed a flower in a greenhouse. You're not fit to be mentioned in the same breath as me. You'll be trampled under my feet forever." Lu Ming's cold and disdainful voice rang out. He had initially treated Yi Qiuxian as an opponent on the same level as him. But now he had changed his mind. Yi Qiuxian would bring along life-saving treasures when he was out adventuring. Unknowingly, he would have a reliance on Yi Qiuxian and wouldn't allow himself to truly experience life and death, even though his safety was guaranteed. Geniuses who couldn't truly experience life and death wouldn't be able to truly reach the pinnacle. Sooner or later, a loophole would appear. Even though Lu Ming had some trump cards, those trump cards were obtained by Lu Ming through life and death experiences. They were completely different from life-saving treasures given by others. Therefore, Lu Ming no longer treated Yi Qiuxian as a true opponent. Yi Qiuxian wasn't fit to be his opponent. In terms of talent, Yi Qiuxian's talent was indisputable. There was probably no one in the younger generation of the primitive universe who could compare to him. Even Lu Ming himself couldn't compare to Yi Qiuxian in terms of talent. But why was Lu Ming able to defeat Yi Qiuxian? It was because Lu Ming had experienced life and death experiences time and time again, which allowed him to transform continuously. Whether it was his body, mind, or potential, they were all transforming continuously. That was why he could trample Yi Qiuxian under his feet. As for Yi Qiuxian, even though his talent was unparalleled, he couldn't truly experience life and death. With a reliance, he would lack the transformation in the future. Lu Ming was confident that as time passed, Yi Qiuxian wouldn't be worthy to be his opponent. As Lu Ming's voice rang out, the war god's spear didn't stop and continued to attack Yi Qiuxian. Even though Lu Ming was confident that he could forever trample Yi Qiuxian under his feet, Yi Qiuxian's talent was still too great. Once he grew up, he would be a huge threat. It was naturally best to get rid of him as soon as possible. The war god's spear was incomparably huge. It continued to attack Yi Qiuxian's body, wanting to destroy Yi Qiuxian's body in one go. But before the attack could even get close to Yi Qiuxian, Lu Ming's hair stood on end. He could feel a fatal danger approaching rapidly. Withdraw! Lu Ming roared as he forcibly withdrew his attack. He executed the Great Aurora art and turned into an aurora as he retreated rapidly. Swoosh! In the sky, a long spear fell from the sky and pierced the ground where Lu Ming was just a moment ago. It blasted a huge hole in the ground. What a terrifying attack! The Peak Almighty! Lu Ming was secretly shocked. He didn't stop and continued to retreat. In the sky, a figure stepped down from the sky. It was a heavenly monarch realm expert from the heavenly human race. It was one of the people who had attacked Lion and the others previously. Qiuxian, are you all right? That Lord of Heaven looked at Yi Qiuxian. Chapter 46-69. The Lord of Heaven of the heavenly human tribe was a little worried when he saw Yi Qiuxian chasing after Lu Ming alone. After fighting with Lion and the others for a while, he left the battlefield and chased after Yi Qiuxian and Lu Ming. Anyway, Lion was seriously injured and the others were exhausted. It was enough to leave the other 7 experts. On the other hand, Yi Qiuxian was more important. He was afraid that something might happen to Yi Qiuxian. After all, Yi Qiuxian was one of the only 3 people in the history of the heavenly human tribe who could control the perfect power of heaven. He was too important to the heavenly human tribe. Although on the surface, Yi Qiuxian's combat strength was definitely stronger than Lu Ming's. However, his opponent was Lu Ming. Lu Ming had the forbidden body. He was still worried. Sure enough, when he arrived, he saw that Yi Qiuxian was completely at a disadvantage. He was continuously bombarded by Lu Ming and could only rely on his life-saving treasure to survive. Although he found it unbelievable and didn't know how Yi Qiuxian could be defeated, he attacked without hesitation. That was why the scene just now happened. Kill him for me, Yi Qiuxian roared. His eyes were red and he seemed to have gone crazy. He was originally elegant and smart. He wouldn't lose his composure like this. The main reason was that Lu Ming had dealt him too big of a blow. He was defeated twice by Lu Ming. This time he was defeated by Lu Ming despite having a higher cultivation base. What made him angrier was Lu Ming's last words. A flower in a greenhouse would never be a match for Lu Ming. In fact, he also understood that Lu Ming was right. He went out to train and brought along life-saving treasures. No matter what, he had a reliance in his heart and couldn't really experience life and death. He understood all of this. However, he couldn't do it. It wasn't easy for him to achieve his current status. His talent was unparalleled and could be said to be the #1 in the current universe. Even in the history of the heavenly human tribe, only 2 legends could be compared to him. His future was bright. He was destined to step onto the peak of the universe and become an invincible overlord. If he didn't bring any life-saving treasures with him, what if he died? Ever since he had grasped the perfect heavenly energy, he no longer had that adventurous spirit. If this continued, he really wouldn't be a match for Lu Ming in the future. Therefore he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He became even more furious. He wanted to kill Lu Ming even more. As long as Lu Ming died, who among the younger generation could be his opponent? The patriarch of the heavenly human tribe, Yi Immortal, was naturally not included. Yi Qiuxian, consider yourself lucky. Lu Ming's voice rang out, but he didn't stop. He retreated at top speed, flying off into the distance. When the Lord of Heaven descended, Lu Ming knew that he would not be able to kill Yi Qiuxian. The Lord of Heaven was in existence at the peak of the Divine Master level. Lu Ming was definitely no match for him. The difference was too great, so he could only retreat. You want to leave? Did you ask for my permission? The Lord of Heaven said coldly. He rushed out and chased after Lu Ming. The Lord of Heaven's speed was extremely fast. However, Lu Ming's great ultimate light skill and great teleportation skill were both extremely fast. Even if the Lord of Heaven wanted to catch up, it wouldn't be that easy. The two of them, one chasing and one fleeing, disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. However, the distance between the two of them was still shrinking. This was because Lu Ming had to pay attention to one thing while escaping in front. That was the ancient remnant beasts of this continent. He had to pay attention to those powerful ancient remnant beasts. He was afraid that they would suddenly attack him. If he saw a powerful ancient remnant beast, he would have to take a detour. Otherwise, if he were to be attacked by the ancient remnant beasts with the Lord of Heaven behind him, it would be really dangerous. As for the Lord of Heaven behind him, he didn't have to worry so much. Since Lu Ming wasn't in danger when he flew past, he naturally wouldn't be in too much danger if he followed Lu Ming's route closely. Therefore, the distance between the two of them was still shrinking rapidly. In just a little more than 10 minutes, the distance between the two of them was very close. Kill? The Lord of Heaven behind him was wearing a purple robe. He held a purple gold battle spear in his hand. The spear stabbed out, and a huge spear shadow stabbed towards Lu Ming. Its speed was so fast that it caught up with Lu Ming in an instant. Lu Ming waved his battle god spear to block, but the moment the two of them collided, the spear light formed by the battle god spear was shattered. Lu Ming could only dodge with all his might. Finally, he narrowly avoided the attack. However, the purple-robed Lord of Heaven's attack came again. This time, he shook his spear, and hundreds of spear shadows pierced through the void and stabbed towards Lu Ming. The spear shadows almost covered the entire void, blocking all of Lu Ming's escape routes. This time, Lu Ming couldn't dodge, so he could only take it head-on. I hope I can block it. Lu Ming roared in his heart. He waved his palm and performed the primitive style, which turned into a continent in front of him. At the same time, his body glowed, and all kinds of defensive ancient secret skills were also performed. There were hundreds of them behind the continent. In the blink of an eye, the spear shadows attacked. Boom, boom, boom. The continent condensed by the primitive style was instantly pierced through. It was the same for those defensive ancient secret techniques. They could only block for a few breaths of time before they were penetrated. After all, the Lord of Heaven was the Lord of Heaven. The universe bridge had already connected the cosmic sea and condensed the origin seed. Moreover, the amount of origin energy he had far surpassed Lu Ming's. His opponent had used origin energy in that move just now. Its power was astonishing, far exceeding that of a 9th-level Divine Lord. It was normal that Lu Ming couldn't block it. Clang, clang, clang. At least 12 spear shadows pierced Lu Ming in the armor that Qiuqiu had transformed into. In the end, they failed to pierce through the armor, but the spear shadows were so powerful that they sent Lu Ming flying tens of thousands of li away. Whoosh! Within the armor, Lu Ming vomited large mouthfuls of blood, his face pale. Although the spear shadows failed to pierce through the armor, the powerful impact still penetrated the armor and struck Lu Ming's body. Although the armor had blocked a large portion of the impact, the remaining power still injured Lu Ming. It should be known that Lu Ming was powerful, but that was only in terms of his ability to fight head-on. After all, he was only a 5th-level Divine Lord. His body's defensive ability wasn't as strong as his ability to fight head-on. If a 7th-level Divine Lord struck Lu Ming, it would be enough to pose a fatal threat to Lu Ming. However, under normal circumstances, a 7th-level Divine Lord wouldn't be able to hit Lu Ming at all. Qiuqiu, are you okay? Lu Ming was somewhat worried about Qiuqiu. Qiuqiu was only a 5th-level Divine Lord. He didn't know if it would have any problems blocking the attack of a Lord of Heaven. It hurts so much that I'm about to cry. That damn celestial race. Qiuqiu yelled. Lu Ming was relieved. It seemed that Qiuqiu was fine. Lu Ming could not be bothered about his injuries. With the help of this force he dashed forward quickly. An armor formed from a metallic life form is actually like an source-level divine weapon. What sort of metallic life form is this? The purple-robed Lord of Heaven was also stunned. Then came endless greed. Chapter 4670. The purple-robed Lord of Heaven's eyes flickered with the flames of greed. A metallic life form could actually transform into a source-level armor and block his attack. This was simply unheard of. In his long life he had never heard of such a thing. The metallic race of the top 10 races was simply trash compared to Qiuqiu. It was definitely not simple, extremely not simple. He wanted to take it for himself. Lu Ming, you can't run away. The purple-robed Lord of Heaven coldly shouted and continued to chase Lu Ming. The two of them chased and fled. Not long after, the distance between them closed again. The purple-robed Lord of Heaven stabbed out with his purple-gold spear again. This time, the purple-robed Lord of Heaven once again erupted with the power of origin. Hundreds of spear shadows whizzed towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming still tried his best to block. The primitive style, all kinds of defensive ancient secret techniques, etc. Although these methods couldn't block the purple-robed Lord of Heaven's attack, they could at least weaken a part of the power, allowing Qiuqiu to take a part of the attack and lessen the impact. Just like before, the primitive style and defensive ancient secret techniques were penetrated. More than 10 spear shadows pierced Lu Ming's body and sent Lu Ming flying again. The powerful impact made Lu Ming's injuries worse. He spat out mouthfuls of blood and many of his bones were fractured. What a powerful force. Too powerful. If this continues, even if Qiuqiu can block the attack, I will be killed by the impact. Lu Ming's mind raced as he tried to think of a countermeasure. However, his body didn't stop. He continued to use the force to charge forward. It's useless even if you hide in the armor. The impact alone can kill you. The purple-robed Lord of Heaven snorted and continued to chase. Not long after, Lu Ming suffered another attack and his injuries worsened. The main reason was that he didn't have time to heal. No matter how strong his vitality was or how fast his recovery was, he couldn't recover. Escape, I will definitely be able to escape. The geography of this continent is complicated and there are powerful surviving species of the Great Desolate Land. Perhaps I can borrow the strength of those powerful surviving species of the Great Desolate Land to repel the other party? Lu Ming kept thinking. Right now, he could only think of one way, and that was to rely on the Great Desolate Ring and the powerful Great Desolate Ancient Species. For example, if he discovered a primordial beast at reciprocity, Lu Ming would directly charge into the primordial ring. After alarming the primordial beast, Lu Ming would immediately enter the primordial ring. That way, the Lord of Heaven would not dare to approach him. However, there were several risks in doing so. Firstly, when he charged towards the powerful primordial remnant species, he had to alarm them. If he did not alarm the Great Desolate Remnant, he would have entered the Great Desolate Ring. That purple-robed Lord of Heaven would have been able to get close and take away the Great Desolate Ring. Then he would have become a turtle in a jar. Secondly, if he alarmed the Great Desolate Remnant species, it would charge towards Lu Ming. Before Lu Ming could enter the Great Desolate Ring, he would be killed by the Great Desolate Remnant species. Thirdly, if he alarmed the Great Desolate Remnant species, Lu Ming would successfully enter the Great Desolate Ring and scare away the purple-robed Lord of Heaven. However, if the Great Desolate Remnant species discovered the Great Desolate Ring and put it away, he would be in trouble. He would not be able to escape and would only be able to remain in the Great Desolate Ring. Only by alarming the Great Desolate Remnant species would Lu Ming successfully enter the Great Desolate Ring and scare away the purple-robed Lord of Heaven. At the same time, the Great Desolate Remnant species would not discover Lu Ming. Only then would Lu Ming be able to escape successfully. With these 3 points of danger, Lu Ming became rather hesitant about whether he should do it or not. At a crucial moment he still had to risk it. It was better than being killed by his opponent. After a while, Lu Ming was struck again, worsening his injuries. I'll risk it. I can't go on like this. I can't shake off the other party. Lu Ming finally made up his mind. He planned to find a strong Great Desolate Remnant species and risk it all. That is, suddenly Lu Ming saw a huge crack in the ground in front of him. The crack was pitch black. Faint roars and screams came from within. It seemed like many Great Desolate Remnant species resided in there. I'll risk it. A ruthless look flashed in Lu Ming's eyes as he charged into that crack. The crack went straight down. The further down it went, the wider it became and the larger it became. There were many protruding rocks on both sides of the crack as well as some caves. Whoosh! Suddenly, a figure charged out of one of the caves and lunged at Lu Ming. This was a huge lizard. Its entire body was green, and a scarlet strip of flesh protruded from its mouth. Then it tried to wrap around Lu Ming. Just a 5th-level divine master. Lu Ming's heart thumped. He thrust out his spear and killed the lizard. His body did not stop as he continued to charge downward. Gaga. Creak, creak, creak. Screams came from the cliffs on both sides of the crack. Pairs of scarlet lights appeared in those pitch-black caves. Those were all eyes. Then, one great desolate remnant species after another crawled out of those caves. There were lizards, toads, spiders, they were all poisonous insects. So many. The extreme light art. Lu Ming was alarmed. His body turned into a beam of light as he charged downward. Swish. Above, the purple-robed Lord of Heaven also chased down. Those lizards, spiders, and toads charged out of the caves and charged at Lu Ming and the purple-robed Lord of Heaven. Poisonous fumes of various colors filled the air, and the entire void was covered by this poisonous fumes. Lu Ming ignored these poisonous gases and attacks. In any case, Qiuqiu was here to block these attacks. He only needed to charge down with all his strength. Scram! The purple-robed Lord of Heaven roared. Powerful energy surged out of his body. It was the power of heavenly punishment. The power of heavenly punishment turned into thousands of lightning bolts that covered the void and purified the poisonous gases. Those lizards, spiders, and toads were also struck by the lightning bolts. Some were directly killed, while others were heavily injured and fell. Although there were many poisonous insects, they were not very strong. The strongest was only at the 7th or 8th level of the Divine Master Realm. Naturally, they could not stop the purple-robed Lord of Heaven. However, the purple-robed Lord of Heaven's speed was slightly affected. Lu Ming took this opportunity to open up some distance. Kill? The purple-robed Lord of Heaven roared. His entire body was covered in the power of heavenly punishment, as if he was wearing armor of lightning. He became one with the purplish-gold battle spear and swooped down, charging toward Lu Ming in a domineering manner. Those poisonous bugs exploded one after another as he rushed past them. The crack was very deep. Lu Ming felt that he had charged down at least 10,000 li before finally reaching the end. That's. When Lu Ming saw the scene below, he felt his scalp go numb and his hair stand on end. There was a pond below and there was a pile of giant snakes in it. Yes, giant snakes. Each snake was more than 10 meters in diameter. There were not just 1 or 2 snakes but a pile of at least a dozen of them. More than 10 giant snakes intertwined with each other, turning into a snake pile, looking incomparably terrifying. Most importantly, each of the giant snakes was emitting a terrifying aura. Peak God Lord. Lu Ming could tell that the cultivation level of each of these giant snakes had reached peak Almighty Master. Chapter 4671. Lu Ming's scalp went numb. He had fallen into a snake's nest. From the looks of it, these giant snakes should be in their breeding season, so they gathered together. Psst, psst. Those giant snakes had already discovered Lu Ming. Several of them rose into the air, exposing their bodies that were more than 100 meters long. They opened their mouths wide and tried to swallow Lu Ming. Lu Ming looked down and saw several pitch-black abysses. Fight! Lu Ming gritted his teeth. Below was the snake's nest, and behind him was the purple Lord of Heaven. He had no way out. If he continued to hesitate, he would only die. With a thought, Lu Ming entered the ancient desolation ring. The ancient desolation ring continued to descend. It landed in the mouth of a giant snake and was swallowed into its stomach. How did this kid disappear? Did he enter the ring? Could it be that the ring has an internal space? The purple Lord of Heaven's mind raced. Only a treasure with an internal space could take him in, and one that could allow living creatures to live in. Such a treasure was extremely rare in the greater thousand world like the Chaos Universe. Lu Ming even had such a treasure. He had too many good things on him. At the thought of this, the purple-robed Lord of Heaven's eyes burned even more fervently. He did not slow down and wanted to kill the giant snake so that he could take control of the Chaos Ring. Whoosh! One of the giant snakes swept its tail at the purple Lord of Heaven like a bolt of lightning. The snake's tail was more powerful than a divine weapon. It directly pierced through the void and let out a terrifying roar. With a terrifying force, it kept pressing towards the purple Lord of Heaven. The purple Lord of Heaven waved his violet golden battle spear and swept it out, colliding with the snake's tail. Boom! With a loud bang, the purple Lord of Heaven's body shook violently. He couldn't help but retreat. His face turned pale and he almost vomited blood. What a strong power. It's even stronger than mine. The purple Lord of Heaven was a little shocked. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, several giant snakes made their moves. All of them lashed out with their tails towards the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven. Every single one of them exploded with an astonishing amount of power. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven's expression was grave. He used his movement technique to continuously dodge, but in the end he was unable to completely dodge. He was swept by a snake tail, and the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven crashed into a wall, coughing up large amounts of blood. With just one strike, 9 of the Lord of Heaven's bones were broken. Then, a giant snake flew out like lightning, opening its mouth and biting towards the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven waved his hand, and a few balls flew into the giant snake's mouth. Then they suddenly exploded, blowing up the giant snake's mouth. However, the giant snake didn't die. It just continued to scream and went completely crazy. The 2 fangs in its mouth flew out like 2 daggers at lightning speed. Although the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven did his best to dodge, he was still struck by one of the fangs. It left a deep wound on his body, almost tearing half of his body apart. Run, run, run. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven was terrified and frantically fled upwards. Fortunately, the giant snakes didn't chase after the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven when they saw that he had run far away. Instead, they fell down and continued to tangle with the other giant snakes. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven didn't dare to be careless, nor did he dare to stop. He continued to charge downwards until he reached the outside of the crack. Only then did he let out a long breath. Then his body trembled and he suddenly coughed up blood. Damn, those fangs are poisonous. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven roared. Previously, he had been struck by one of the giant snake's fangs. That fangs contained a deadly poison that had already spread throughout his body. He had to heal as quickly as possible. He casually laid down some alert formations around the crack and then sat down cross-legged. He took out several medicinal pills, swallowed them, and began to circulate his energy to expel the poison. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven spent 3 days to expel the poison from his body. His injuries were mostly healed. That brat Lu Ming still hasn't come out. Could it be that he's already dead? Not necessarily. He entered a treasure with a hidden space. He shouldn't die so easily. This crack is very dangerous and I can't go alone. I should find someone else to go with me. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven thought to himself. He actually wanted to capture Lu Ming by himself and take all of Lu Ming's treasures for himself. However, it was clear that he was too weak. It was too dangerous for him to enter the crevice alone. He planned to go with Yi Qiushan and the others. Immediately, the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven laid down some formations around the crack. These formations were surveillance formations. He could see them even from far away. This kind of formation was very simple and basic in the Eldritch universe. It was also very practical, so many people with higher cultivation would learn it easily. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven laid down surveillance formations around the crack mainly because he was afraid that Lu Ming would sneak away after he left. Then, the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven's figure flashed and left the place. How do I get out? Lu Ming frowned. He stayed in the Chaos Ring and sat cross-legged. He spread out his spirit sense and covered the surface of the Chaos Ring. He could observe the situation outside the Chaos Ring. It was obvious that the Chaos Ring was in the giant snake's stomach. At this moment, there was a green and disgusting liquid surging towards the Chaos Ring from all directions, wrapping the Chaos Ring within. This liquid was terrifyingly corrosive and poisonous. It was the giant snake's digestive fluid. It was extremely terrifying. No matter how powerful a creature was, once it was wrapped in this digestive fluid, it would be poisoned and slowly corroded. However, the Chaos Ring was not to be underestimated. It was one of the 4 great treasures of the Life Spirit Heavenly Court. Its material was indestructible and could not be corroded by this digestive fluid. Therefore, the Chaos Ring was completely fine. Lu Ming was not worried about this. What he was worried about was how to get out. Should he break open the giant snake's body and kill his way out? Obviously, that was not realistic. After he got out, he would probably be completely corroded by the digestive fluid. Should he release the War God's spear and make it expand rapidly to burst the giant snake's stomach? That was also impossible. This giant snake was a peak divine master. At this level, it was easy to change the size of its body. When the War God's spear expanded, the giant snake's body could also expand. It was a stupid method to make the snake's body explode by expanding its size. It might work at a lower level, but it was completely impossible at a higher level. Lu Ming had a headache. The only thing he could do now was to wait. Perhaps the chaos ring could be excreted along with the giant snake's excrement? Although this method was embarrassing and disgusting, there was no other way. After about half a day, Lu Ming could clearly feel that the giant snake was moving quickly. It should be done and had left the nest. After a few hours, the giant snake stopped. After a while, the giant snake started moving again. Just like that, a few days passed in the blink of an eye. The chaos ring was still in the giant snake's stomach. Chapter 4672. On this day, Lu Ming could clearly feel that the giant snake was violently shaking. Outside, there was a violent rumble and the giant snake's sharp cry. The giant snake is fighting. What is it fighting against? Could it be that the people from the heavenly palace have arrived? Lu Ming's heart sank. It had already been a few days. It wasn't surprising that the people from the heavenly palace had arrived. The battle didn't last for long. After a few minutes, Lu Ming sensed that the giant snake was no longer moving. Lu Ming's spiritual awareness covered the surface of the ancient desolation ring. He could feel that the surrounding digestive fluid had receded. The life force of the giant snake was also quickly draining away. The giant snake was dead. It was obvious that the giant snake had been killed. Lu Ming's heart also rose. He hoped that the people who had killed the giant snake weren't from the heavenly palace. Wuxia. The giant snake's body was being cut open. Looking outside through the ancient desolation ring, he could see that the giant snake's stomach was also cut open. The light outside shone in. That's a desolation remnant. After seeing the situation outside, Lu Ming couldn't help but feel happy. The people who had killed the giant snake weren't from the heavenly palace, but several giant red birds. These giant red birds had long beaks and extremely sharp claws. At this moment, these giant birds were using their sharp claws to tear apart the giant snake's body. Small, small, small. Lu Ming controlled the ancient desolation ring and made it quickly shrink until it was as small as a speck of dust. He then attached it to a piece of the giant snake's bone. He didn't dare to act rashly. These giant birds were able to kill the giant snake in just a few minutes. This was enough to show their terrifying strength. Lu Ming couldn't even defeat the giant snake. If he acted rashly, he would be courting death. The giant birds were enjoying their meal to their heart's content. They didn't even notice the tiny ancient desolation ring. Soon the giant snake was almost completely eaten. Only a few scraps were left. After the giant birds enjoyed their meal, they seemed to be satisfied. After chirping a few times, they spread their wings and flew away in the blink of an eye. Lu Ming let out a long breath. However, he didn't immediately come out of the ancient desolation ring. Instead, he controlled the ancient desolation ring to fly up and looked around with his spiritual awareness. This was a plain with a few hills in the distance. There were no other desolation remnants around. Lu Ming heaved a sigh of relief. With a thought, he flew out of the primitive ring. He condensed a wisp of flame and shrouded the primitive ring, removing the residual digestive fluid on the surface of the primitive ring. He then put the primitive ring into his sea of consciousness. I didn't expect there was an underground world under the crack. Lu Ming looked around. The surroundings were wide and boundless. The vegetation was lush and full of vitality. Apart from the dim lighting, it was no different from the outside of the crack. I don't know where I am now and how far away I am from that crack. I wonder if the people from the heavenly palace have come after me? Lu Ming pondered. If the purple-robed Lord of Heaven was fine, Lu Ming guessed that the heavenly human race would most likely come after him. They wouldn't let him go so easily. A few days had passed. Perhaps the heavenly palace had already entered the crack. I can't go back to that crack. Maybe the heavenly palace is waiting for me there. Maybe there are other exits. Lu Ming pondered. He planned to leave this place first and look for other exits. But before leaving, Lu Ming waved his hands. Runes spread and several formations appeared around him. Similarly, this was a monitoring array formation. If the heavenly palace's people passed by here, they would be discovered by Lu Ming. After setting up the monitoring array, Lu Ming flew along the ground and disappeared from the place. Lu Ming randomly chose a direction and rushed forward. Every once in a while, Lu Ming would set up a few surveillance formations in some hidden corners. Very soon a day passed. This underground world was really vast. It also gave birth to many powerful primitive surviving beasts. Throughout the day, Lu Ming saw many surviving beasts of the untainted land. Of course, these primitive surviving beasts varied in strength. It was impossible for all of them to be as powerful as the giant snakes or the fiery red giant birds. There were primitive surviving beasts of all realms. Ordinary surviving species of the untainted land did not pose a threat to Lu Ming at all. He just had to avoid those powerful surviving species of the untainted land. Fortunately, Lu Ming did not encounter any primordial surviving beasts of the origin realm that day. At this moment, the purple-robed Lord of Heaven finally found Yi Qiuxian and the others outside the crack. "Young Master Qiuxian, how are the Heaven Destroyer and the others?" asked the purple-robed Lord of Heaven. "I killed one of them. The others escaped." Yi Qiuxian snorted coldly. He was extremely displeased. Originally, with their strength they had the absolute upper hand. Even if they couldn't wipe out Lion and the others, they would definitely suffer heavy losses. However, due to his defeat in the battle against Lu Ming, the purple-robed Lord of Heaven left the battlefield to save him. This allowed the Heaven Destroyer to catch their breath. In the end, only one of them was killed. The others all escaped. This was equivalent to him indirectly helping the Heaven Destroyer. It would be strange if he wasn't happy. "Where's Lu Ming? Did you kill him?" Yi Qiuxian changed the topic and asked the purple-robed Lord of Heaven. "He managed to escape. That little brat has many treasures and is extremely crafty. He managed to escape to a dangerous place." The purple-robed Lord of Heaven explained in detail how Lu Ming escaped into the crack. Of course, he had made some slight changes in some parts. For example, he didn't mention that Lu Ming had a treasure that contained an internal space. He only said that Lu Ming rushed into the crack and he followed him in, only to be attacked by the giant snake. As for the metal life form being able to transform into a source-grade armor, he didn't want to say it. However, after thinking that Yi Qiuxian should know, he said it. He was a little selfish. He wanted to take all the treasures on Lu Ming. That Lu Ming has great luck. Even if there's a powerful remnant species in the crack, he won't die so easily. He's most likely still alive. Let's go and kill him in the crack. Yi Qiuxian said coldly. His killing intent towards Lu Ming was getting stronger and stronger. He must find a way to get rid of Lu Ming. "I've set up a monitoring formation around the crack. I didn't see Lu Ming come out of the crack. He should still be inside," the purple-robed Lord of Heaven said. "Alright, lead the way. Let's go." Yi Qiuxian Dao. Yi Qiuxian immediately led the way toward the crack. Not long after, they arrived above the crack. "The last time I went down, I encountered a group of giant snakes. There were more than a dozen of them, and each of them had a cultivation of peak Divine Lord. They were very strong. I don't know if they're still there. You must be careful when you go down," the purple-robed Lord of Heaven said. "Gather together. If you find that you can't handle the danger, retreat quickly." Yi Qiuxian Dao. 8 peak Divine Lord experts immediately surrounded Yi Qiuxian and rushed down the crack. Soon they were attacked by the lizards and spiders on both sides of the crack. Chapter 4673. However, the poisonous insects on both sides of the crack were unable to cause any harm to Yi Qiuxian and the others. They easily killed a large number of them and soon arrived at the bottom of the crack. "Be careful, there are giant snakes down there. There are only 3 left. Don't worry, kill them." Yi Qiuxian and the others found that there were indeed giant snakes under the crack. However, there were only 3 left as the others had all left. Hiss, the 3 giant snakes attacked Yi Qiuxian and the others. Each of the giant snakes had the cultivation of a peak almighty. However, there were only 3 of them. On the Heavenly Palace's side, there were 8 Lord of Heaven. 2 of them even had source-level divine weapons. Their combat strength was far superior to the 3 giant snakes. The 2 sides fought for a while. In the end, the 3 giant snakes were defeated and all of them were killed. "Peel open the giant snake's body and see if Lu Ming has been eaten by the giant snake," Yi Qiuxian said. Immediately, one of the Lord of Heaven stepped forward, took out a sharp sword and cut open the giant snake's stomach. However, he did not find Lu Ming's body. "It seems that Lu Ming is not here. It's very likely that he survived," Yi Qiuxian said coldly. "This underground world looks very big. It won't be easy to find Lu Ming. How about we split up and chase him? 2 people in a group and chase in 4 directions." The purple Lord of Heaven's suggestion was approved by the others. This underground world was indeed very big. They could not see the end of it. If they searched together, the efficiency would be too low. If they split up, the efficiency would be greatly increased. With 2 Lord of Heaven in a group, even if Lu Ming had many treasures, he would not be able to escape death. Immediately they split into 4 groups. 2 Lord of Heaven in a group. Yi Qiuxian with 2 Lord of Heaven in a group. The four groups split into four directions. They shot out like lightning and disappeared in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Lu Ming was hiding on a giant rock and looking ahead. Is that a glazed peach? Lu Ming stared at a mountain peak in front of him without blinking. Up ahead there was a mountain peak. The peak of the mountain wasn't very tall, and there was a huge peach tree at the peak. This peach tree had a diameter of 100 meters and a height of several thousand meters. It was incomparably huge. There were at least a few hundred peaches growing on this peach tree. Each peach was as big as a bucket. The peaches were sparkling and translucent, like colored glass. Lu Ming had seen records of such peaches in ancient books. This type of peach was known as the glazed peach. It was a type of primary divine medicine. Master-grade divine medicine, as the name implied, was a divine medicine that was extremely useful to divine masters. This was especially true for the colored glazed peach, which contained extremely rich essence qi. It could be refined directly to replace the desolate crystal and increase the cultivation of a divine master. For divine masters, other than the primal chaos crystal, there were actually many main-level divine herbs that could increase their cultivation. However, master-grade godly medicines were simply too rare. They were much rarer than great desolation gems. Just like source-grade godly medicines, the desolate universe couldn't nurture any of them. If one wanted to obtain them, they could only do so in the universe ruins. However, the laws of the universe ruins were chaotic in the past, so very few of them could be nurtured. It was only in the last few dozen stellar years that the laws of the universe ruins became more orderly. Some places could nurture some main-level divine herbs, but they were extremely rare. Therefore, divine masters mainly relied on great desolation gems to increase their cultivation. This continent had always been sealed in the thousand-year battlefield. Just like the desolate continent, it didn't seem to be affected. The surviving species of the desolate universe had reproduced here, and they had encountered source-grade divine herbs before. Thus, it was normal for some main-level divine herbs to be nurtured. If I want to break through to the 6th level of the Divine Master realm, I'll need at least 5 to 6 million Great Desolation Gems. Where can I find so many Great Desolation Gems? If I have a few hundred colored glazed peaches, I might be able to take a big step forward and save a lot of Great Desolation Gems. Lu Ming's eyes lit up as he thought about it. He had to increase his strength as soon as possible because he didn't know when the heavenly human race would arrive. If he could increase his cultivation to the 6th level of the Divine Master realm, he would be much more confident in protecting himself. However, it wasn't that easy to get these glazed peaches, because there were many apes living on the peach trees and mountain peaks. These apes were burly and extremely strong. They were obviously surviving species of the desolate universe. There were more than 100 of them. If he wanted to get these glazed peaches, he would have to fight with these apes. There's a peak Divine Master Monkey King and 3 9th-level Divine Masters. The rest are all below the 9th level of the Divine Master realm. Even so, I can't deal with them. Now, I can only wait for the right time. Lu Ming thought about it and used the great concealment technique to hide in the rocks and wait for the right time. Half a day later. Ao ao ao, the apes howled loudly, especially the Monkey King. Then it led a group of apes into the distance and disappeared from Lu Ming's sight. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. The opportunity had come. The Monkey King had taken away more than half of the apes, including 2 9th-level Divine Master apes. Now there was only 1 9th-level Divine Master ape left on the mountain peak. With a 9th-level Divine Master, Lu Ming now had a chance. However, Lu Ming did not immediately make his move. The Monkey King had only just left. If he made a move now, he might alarm the Monkey King. Lu Ming waited for 10 minutes before making his move. Swish. Lu Ming used the extreme light art and shot toward the mountain peak like a bolt of lightning. Ao ao ao, the apes immediately noticed Lu Ming and furiously roared. 10 apes leaped at Lu Ming. Kill? Lu Ming roared as the war god's spear thrust forward, transforming into 10 spear lights. Swoosh. Swoosh. The war god's spear was incredibly sharp. Although these apes had tough physical bodies and astonishing defensive abilities, they could not block the war god spear's attacks. Those below the 8th level of the Godlord realm were unable to block a single spear light and were killed. The 2 8th-level Godlord apes relied on their powerful defensive abilities to preserve their lives, but they were heavily injured, their heads almost exploding. Lu Ming moved with incredible speed and arrived at the mountain peak in an instant. Boom. The 9th-tier Divine Master ape stomped on the ground, causing the ground to crack. Its burly body charged toward Lu Ming like a small mountain. It threw a punch, causing the void to crack. It was a shocking sight. Little ball. Lu Ming exclaimed softly. Qiuqiu flew out and turned into a mirror. It shot out a beam of light and shrouded the 9th-level Divine Master Ape. The 9th-level God Lord Ape was instantly affected and fell into an illusion. However, primordial descendants seem to have a powerful resistance to illusions. In just a moment, the ape began to roar and struggle. But this moment was enough for Lu Ming. Bish! Lu Ming thrust his spear with all his might toward the 9th-level Divine Master Ape. This spear erupted with the power of Origin Source. Chapter 4674. A 9th-level Godlord Ape was the strongest ape here. As long as he could deal with this ape, the rest would be easy. Thus, Lu Ming used his full strength the moment he attacked. Origin energy also erupted and poured into the war god's spear. Whoosh! This spear was unstoppable. It directly penetrated the space between the ape's eyebrows, blasting a large hole in the ape's forehead. The vitality of a primeval remnant was not to be underestimated. Even with a large hole in its forehead, this 9th-level Godlord Ape did not die immediately. It madly punched out with its fists, sending out 10-some punches before finally collapsing to the ground. Swish, swish, swish. Lu Ming did not stop attacking the other apes. Faced with apes below the 9th tier of the Divine Master Realm, with Qiuqiu's cooperation, even without the power of the Origin, they could destroy them easily. Lu Ming killed 7 to 8 7th tier and 8th tier Divine Master apes consecutively. The other apes were terrified. They no longer dared to continue fighting with Lu Ming, howling as they ran off into the distance. These apes were clearly running in the direction of the Monkey King, clearly intending to inform it. But Lu Ming did not care. He only needed a short period of time to harvest the colored peaches. Once he was done, Lu Ming would leave. Even if the Monkey King returned, it would not be able to find him. With the apes fleeing, Lu Ming flew to the top of the tree. His forbidden energy transformed into large hands that began to harvest the colored peaches. One bucket-sized colored peaches after another were put into Lu Ming's storage ring. Lu Ming was very fast at harvesting. In just a few minutes he had harvested more than 300 colored peaches. Lu Ming then transformed into a ray of light that shot off into the distance, vanishing in the blink of an eye. More than 10 minutes after Lu Ming flew away, an earth-shattering roar could be heard from afar. The Monkey King flew over quickly. When it saw the bare peach tree, it roared furiously. It smashed the ground around it, forming many big pits. Unfortunately, it was useless. Just like before, Lu Ming set up several monitoring arrays after flying for a short distance. After flying for half a day, Lu Ming found a relatively secluded place and sat down cross-legged. He took out a glazed peach and began to gnaw it. The colored glass peach looked like colored glass, but its flesh was juicy and melted in the mouth. It was filled with rich life essence and energy. It was as big as a water bucket and Lu Ming finished it in a few bites. Waves of energy crisscrossed within Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming began refining with all his might. About an hour later, the glazed peach was completely refined by Lu Ming. Carefully sensing the changes in the forbidden energy in his body, Lu Ming gasped in amazement. The energy contained in a single glazed peach is equivalent to 10,000 desolate crystals. More than 300 glazed peaches are equivalent to more than 3 million desolate crystals. There was joy on Lu Ming's face. Although more than 300 glazed peaches couldn't help Lu Ming break through, they could save Lu Ming more than 3 million desolate crystals. If he had enough main-grade divine herbs, he could indeed break through directly. These glazed peaches are truly priceless. If I'm below the 3rd layer of the Divine Lord Realm, I only need one to break through. Lu Ming sighed inwardly. He then took out another glazed peach and continued to refine it. Just like this, several days passed. Lu Ming had refined several dozen glazed peaches, and the forbidden energy in his body was growing thicker and thicker. But at this time Lu Ming stopped cultivating. Let's see if the people from the Heavenly Palace are here. Lu Ming thought for a moment, then waved his hand. Several light screens appeared in the air. These light screens corresponded to the surveillance formations he had set up and could project images of the nearby area. He didn't see anyone from the Heavenly Palace in these images. Lu Ming waved his hand again and the images changed. After all, Lu Ming had set up many surveillance formations, so he had to look through them one by one. After continuously changing dozens of images, finally, Lu Ming's pupils shrank when he saw one of the images. In this image there were 2 figures standing high in the sky. These 2 figures were naturally the Lord of Heaven of the Heavenly Human Tribe. One of them was the purple-robed Lord of Heaven who had chased after Lu Ming. Moreover, Lu Ming instantly determined that these two Lord of Heaven were very close to his current location. A layer of cold sweat seeped out of Lu Ming's forehead. He had forgotten about it because he was cultivating. Fortunately, he had checked in time. If he had delayed any longer, the other party might have found him. If the two Lord of Heaven attacked together, even if he had the protection of Qiuqiu's armor, he would still be shocked to death. Lu Ming ended his cultivation, withdrew his aura, and quietly left this place. Not long after Lu Ming left, two figures flashed in the place where Lu Ming had been cultivating in seclusion. The purple-robed Lord of Heaven appeared in the sky, looking in all directions and spreading out their spiritual senses. However, Lu Ming was now experienced. Before leaving, he had wiped out the aura he left behind, so the other party didn't find anything. Could it be that Lu Ming is not in this area? Or has he been eaten by the surviving species of the untainted land? The other Lord of Heaven, who was more burly, frowned. I don't think so. I guess he's near this area. The purple-robed Lord of Heaven said. Oh, why do you think so? The burly Lord of Heaven said in confusion. Have you forgotten those apes you saw before? Those apes were as violent as thunder, and that Monkey King was filled with killing intent. I'm guessing that there must have been a fruit on that peach tree, but it was plucked away by someone. That's why those apes were so violent. The purple-robed Lord of Heaven analyzed. Are you saying that Lu Ming plucked it away? The burly Lord of Heaven's eyes lit up. The others are searching in other directions. Who else could be in this direction except for us? So, I'm sure that Lu Ming is in this area. Maybe he's not far from us. The purple-robed Lord of Heaven said. Now that you mention it, it does make sense. Let's speed up the search. The burly Lord of Heaven laughed and flew forward. His spiritual consciousness whizzed out and covered a large area. On the other hand, Lu Ming was flying at high speed. At the same time, many thoughts were running through his mind. It seems that the people from the Heavenly Palace have really come in. Their purpose is obviously for me. I can't go on like this. They'll find me sooner or later. I either have to find another way out or launch a counterattack. Various thoughts flashed through Lu Ming's mind. In the distant sky, a sharp chirp interrupted Lu Ming's train of thought. In the distant sky, there was a golden eagle. Its body was golden and its wings were hundreds of meters long. This golden eagle was almost identical to the golden eagle that Lion and the others had besieged earlier. Lu Ming was sure that the two were of the same species. Even though they were far away, Lu Ming could feel the terrifying aura of the golden eagle in the distance. It was definitely a peak almighty surviving species of the untainted land, and it was extremely terrifying. This metal mine was just an ordinary metal mine. It wasn't precious, but it was enough for them to pass through. Qiuqiu wriggled and enveloped Lu Ming within it. It then integrated into the metal mine and moved along the metal mine toward the cliff. The cliff looked like it was made of brass, but it turned out to be a huge metal mine. This also made things easier for Lu Ming and the others. Qiuqiu brought Lu Ming along and silently appeared on a cliff above the golden condor, watching it secretly from above. Those are bird eggs. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He discovered that there was a bird's nest on the protruding rock below. There were 3 huge golden bird eggs in the nest. The golden eagle was obviously incubating the eggs. If I can steal an egg, this golden eagle will probably go crazy. Right, I got it? Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He thought of a way to use this golden eagle to deal with the two Lord of Heaven from the Heavenly Palace. Lu Ming and Qiuqiu quietly waited in the metal mine. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed. They're here. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. He saw 2 figures rapidly flying over from afar. They were the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven and the burly Lord of Heaven saw the golden eagle from afar and didn't dare to approach. They just glanced at it and left. Naturally, they couldn't discover Lu Ming and the others. What a pity, Lu Ming sighed. His plan hadn't succeeded yet, so he could only continue to hide. In the blink of an eye, another few days had passed. Whoosh! The great golden condor soared into the sky, flying into the distance in search of food. Just like the golden eagle that Lion dealt with previously, this golden eagle also set up a formation before it left to hide the eggs. It couldn't be seen from the outside at all. Good chance. After the golden eagle left, Lu Ming and Qiuqiu took action. With Lu Ming's attainments and formations, it would be difficult for him to break the concealment formation set up by the golden eagle. It would take him at least a few days. After such a long time, the golden eagle would have been alerted. However, there was a loophole in this formation. There was a metal mine below. Therefore, Qiuqiu directly took action from below and silently obtained an egg. The golden bird egg had a diameter of a few meters. Lu Ming kept it in the ancient desolation ring. Then, Qiuqiu took Lu Ming and continued to merge with the metal mine before leaving silently. Not long after, the golden eagle seemed to have sensed that something was wrong with the egg and hurried back. When it saw that an egg was missing, it immediately let out an earth-shattering cry and flew around in the sky. From time to time, it would spit out a golden stream of light from its mouth, blasting a large hole in the ground. Caw! The golden eagle screamed and pounced on the other surviving species of the ancient wilderness in the surrounding area. Before dashing into the metal or vein, Lu Ming took out the golden egg and threw it out with all his might. The golden egg was like a golden piece of metal. It smashed towards the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven and the burly man. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven and the burly Lord of Heaven really thought that the golden egg was Lu Ming's weapon to attack them. Clang! The burly Lord of Heaven held his battle saber and slashed out, directly splitting the golden egg into two halves. The egg liquid spilled all over the ground. This is an egg? The burly Lord of Heaven and the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven were slightly stunned. At this moment, an earth-shattering cry sounded. On the cliff, the golden eagle rushed into the sky. Its incomparably sharp eyes looked at the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven and the burly Lord of Heaven. When it saw the broken golden egg, its eyes turned red. It let out a crazy roar. Its golden body rushed towards the burly Lord of Heaven and the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven like a bolt of lightning. Oh no, we've been tricked. Damn it, let's go. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven immediately reacted. He roared and turned to run. The burly Lord of Heaven was slightly stunned. He also turned to run. However, their speed was much slower than that of the golden eagle. At this moment, the golden eagle was filled with endless killing intent. Its golden wings flapped rapidly. Its speed was extremely fast. In just a few minutes, it caught up with the burly Lord of Heaven. It opened its mouth and a golden blade of light shot towards the burly Lord of Heaven. The burly Heaven Monarch yelled as he waved his hand and slashed out a ray of light to block the light blade. However, the golden eagle had already arrived. Its golden wings were sharper than a divine blade. It slashed at the burly Lord of Heaven. Clang! The burly Heaven Monarch brandished his saber to block the attack. When the two collided, there was a violent explosion. Then, the burly Heaven Monarch's body shook violently and flew backward like a cannonball. As he flew, he vomited large amounts of blood. The bones in one of his arms were shattered. He almost couldn't hold his blade. His internal organs were also severely injured and almost shattered. They were both peak almighty, but his combat strength was far inferior to the golden eagle. He was severely injured in one move. After sending the burly Lord of Heaven flying, the golden eagle roared and continued to attack the burly man. Save me. Come and help me. Let's fight this eagle together. The burly man roared at the purple-robed Lord of Heaven. He was no match for the golden eagle alone. He would be torn to pieces. If there were two people, they would have a better chance of escaping. However, the purple-robed Lord of Heaven didn't even turn his head. He only shouted, "Hold on for a while. I'll go and find reinforcements. We're both peak almighty. I'll find a few more people to kill it." As he shouted, the purple-robed Lord of Heaven fled even faster. Hold on my ass. How am I supposed to hold on alone? The burly Lord of Heaven roared in rage. It was obvious that the purple-robed Lord of Heaven wanted to use him as a shield so that he could escape. But what could he do in this situation? He could only fight with his life on the line. With a furious roar, the paramount power of heaven blazed. The origin power of the origin seed was fully unleashed, surging into his saber as he slashed at the golden eagle. However, the golden eagle didn't dodge the attack of the burly Lord of Heaven, allowing it to strike its body. With a clang, the burly Lord of Heaven's saber struck the golden feathers, but it couldn't break through the golden eagle's defense. Instead, the golden eagle's sharp claws grabbed the chest of the burly Lord of Heaven and crushed his heart. Lu Ming, I can't accept this. The burly Lord of Heaven let out a desperate roar. In the next moment, the golden condor's sharp claws tore the burly Lord of Heaven's body into pieces. His head was also swallowed by the golden condor. A powerful heaven monarch had perished in such an aggrieved manner. After killing the burly Lord of Heaven, the golden eagle was obviously not appeased. It flapped its wings and continued to fly towards the purple-robed Lord of Heaven. It believed that the purple-robed Lord of Heaven and the burly Lord of Heaven were in cahoots. Both of them were going to die. Damn it. The purple-robed Lord of Heaven was shocked and fled frantically. But it was obvious that the golden eagle was faster. Although there was some distance between the two, the distance between the two was quickly closing. Damn it, what should I do? What should I do? The purple-robed Lord of Heaven was extremely anxious, and various thoughts kept running through his mind. If this went on, he would also follow in the footsteps of the burly Lord of Heaven and be torn apart by the golden eagle. He didn't want to die like this, especially because of Lu Ming. His ultimate heavenly energy was burning severely, and the origin seed in his origin seed was completely exhausted. His fighting prowess was far from his peak. Even if he were to dodge with all his might, he would not be able to completely avoid the attacks of the 3 venomous bugs. He was directly hit by the toad's poisonous gas, causing him to scream in pain. At the same time, the giant lizard's tail whipped the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven's body smashed into the swamp like a cannonball. The purple-clothed Lord of Heaven was smashed into the depths of the swamp and sank into the mud. However, the 3 venomous bugs did not have time to continue attacking, because the golden condor had already arrived. As soon as the golden condor entered the swamp, it swooped down and pounced on the swamp. The golden condor's target was the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven, but the 3 venomous bugs thought that the golden condor's target was them. This was because the golden condor usually fed on venomous bugs and snakes. Therefore, the 3 venomous bugs attacked the golden condor with all their might. The two sides immediately engaged in a fierce battle. Terrifying energy waves swept through the swamp. In the depths of the swamp, the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven vomited large mouthfuls of blood. His blood dyed the mud red. The giant lizard's tail whip had severely injured him. In addition, he was also poisoned by the toad's poison. This kind of poison had seeped into every part of his body and was constantly destroying his physical body. This kind of poison could even destroy his soul, making his soul feel weak. "Run, I must escape," the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven roared in his heart. He unleashed his remaining strength and broke through the mud, moving forward. He was unlucky. As he moved through the mud, he was hit by a few energy waves that shot down from above, worsening his injuries. However, he still managed to escape from the battlefield. When he was far away from the place where the 3 venomous bugs and the golden condor were fighting, he climbed out of the mud and flew into the distance. Lu Ming had been flying in the direction of the golden condor and the purple-clothed Lord of Heaven. After chasing for a while, a sharp cry suddenly came from a direction. "It's that golden condor. I almost went in the wrong direction." Lu Ming's eyes flashed. The golden condor's voice pierced through the void and traveled far to the left of Lu Ming. Lu Ming chased in the wrong direction. Fortunately, he heard the golden condor's voice. Swish! Lu Ming flew directly in the direction of the golden condor's voice. Soon he heard a series of roars. In addition to the golden condor's cry, there were also the cries of other surviving species of the untainted land. Lu Ming restrained his aura and approached carefully. He hid behind a large rock and looked forward. Refining the colored peaches alone is still too slow. Moreover, even if I refine all the colored peaches in my hand, my cultivation won't be able to break through to the 6th tier of the Divine Master Realm. There won't be a significant increase in my fighting strength. I need to think of another method. I can either find another way to deal with Yi Qiuxian and the others or find another exit to leave. Lu Ming pondered and made up his mind. He stopped refining the colored peaches and got up to leave in search of an opportunity to escape. On the other side, Yi Qiuxian and the others had been searching for Lu Ming over the past few days, but to no avail. They did, however, find some main divine herbs, so this trip wasn't in vain. However, Yi Qiuxian's expression was still very ugly. He couldn't rest easy until he killed Lu Ming. "Send a message to the others and ask if there's any news about Lu Ming," Yi Qiuxian said. "All right." The 2 Lord of Heaven beside Yi Qiuxian nodded and took out their respective voice transmission jade talismans to send messages to the other 3 groups. In the universe ruins, the illusory divine jade definitely couldn't be used. However, voice transmission jade talismans could be used. As long as the distance wasn't too far, they could use the voice transmission jade talismans to send messages. However, the speed of the voice transmission jade talismans was far inferior to the illusory divine jade. The next moment, several beams of light flew out of the two Lord of Heaven's hands and disappeared into the sky. They waited quietly. After a while, two beams of light flew towards them from afar and were caught by them. They were two voice transmission jade talismans. The two scanned them with their spiritual senses and then handed the voice transmission jade talismans to Yi Qiuxian. There's no news about Lu Ming. Yi Qiuxian frowned. Two of the groups had sent messages saying that they hadn't found any traces of Lu Ming. Could Lu Ming have died in the mouth of the wilderness surviving species? Yi Qiuxian guessed. I can't deal with it at all. Lu Ming sighed. Let's wait and see. These ancient species seem to be competing for something. If they can injure each other, we will have a chance. Bone Demon said. The battle continued and it was getting more and more intense. The 5 surviving species of the Untainted Land wanted to kill the pitch-black tiger-like surviving species of the Untainted Land. Their target seemed to be that cave. As for the tiger-like Great Desolate surviving species, it guarded the cave tightly. It displayed its terrifying battle prowess and fought against the 5 Great Desolate surviving species. A few minutes later, both sides were injured. Wounds appeared on their bodies and blood kept flowing. The ancient species that looked like an eagle swooped down. Its sharp claws were like hooks. It immediately tore off a large piece of flesh from the ancient species that looked like a tiger. However, the tiger-like surviving species of the Untainted Land went berserk as well. It pounced forward and clawed at the head of the python, crushing it into pieces. A powerful python was killed. However, the python fought back before it died. Its tail hit the ancient species that looked like a tiger and made it roll away. However, the ancient species that looked like a tiger rolled a few times and stood up again. It continued to fight as if nothing had happened. The two sides fought fiercely for a few more minutes. After paying a certain price, the ancient species that looked like a tiger seized the opportunity to kill another ancient species. The remaining 3 ancient species were a little frightened. However, they did not retreat. Instead, they continued to fight. The battle that followed was even more intense. Both sides were covered in wounds. With a wave of his hand, several hundred jade talismans flew out. I don't need that much. 36 pieces is enough. The bone devil flew out from between Lu Ming's eyebrows. It waved its bony claws and runes flew out one after another, and submerged into the 36 jade talismans. He was refining a simple jade talisman. The bone devil's speed was very fast. It finished refining in about a minute. Let's go in. Bone put away the 36 jade talismans and landed on Lu Ming's shoulder. Lu Ming concealed his aura and carefully walked into the cave. He did not encounter any danger and easily passed through the cave. What entered his eyes was a rather large cave. In the center of the cave there was a pond. Some plants grew on both sides of the pond. They were lush and filled with an astonishing medicinal fragrance. That's main grade divine medicine and, after seeing the plants on both sides of the pond, Lu Ming's eyes widened. If he had not tried his best to hold it in, his heart would have probably begun to beat violently. Those plants were not ordinary plants. They were main grade divine medicines. There were several hundred of them. However, this was not what attracted Lu Ming's attention the most. What attracted Lu Ming's attention the most was the center of the pond. There was a lotus in the center of the pond. The lotus gave off a hazy glow. Above the lotus, there was a small lotus made of energy that flew around. Origin grade divine medicine. Lu Ming recognized it with a single glance. It was an origin grade divine medicine. It contained a dense origin imprint. It was a origin grade divine medicine that could increase a reciprocity expert's cultivation after they refined it. Lion and the others had come across a origin grade divine medicine earlier. It was because of that origin grade divine medicine that they had engaged in a great battle with the Golden Condor. Needless to say, origin grade divine medicines were precious. Even reciprocity experts would turn green with envy when they saw them. They would want to kill each other. Lu Ming had never thought that there would be one here. Lu Ming finally understood why the 5 surviving species of the primordial world had besieged the tiger-like surviving species of the primordial world. He reckoned that their objective was this stock of source-level divine medicine. The tiger-like primitive descendant lay on the edge of the pond, chewing on a few main-grade divine medicines. It was very likely that it wanted to use the main-grade divine medicine to heal its wounds. What a waste, Lu Ming muttered inside. However, he could already tell that the injuries of the tiger-like primitive descendant were extremely severe. Even now, blood was still flowing from its wounds, dyeing the ground red. Its aura was very weak. It lay on the ground without moving at all. It did not notice Lu Ming at all. Fantastic. The injuries of this primitive descendant are even more severe than I imagined. The three corpses belonged to the three primordial surviving species that had been killed by the tiger-shaped primordial surviving species. They were all peak divine masters and extremely powerful. Lu Ming, I'll enter your ancient desolate ring first and refine the demonic bone puppet. This kind of one-time use demonic bone puppet can be refined very quickly. You can find a place to set it up. Guillermo said. All right. Lu Ming nodded. With a wave of his hand, he kept Guillermo into the ancient desolate ring. Then, his figure flashed and he left the place. Not long after, Lu Ming found a relatively hidden canyon. It's here. However, I still need to set it up for Yi Qiuxian and the others to find me, Lu Ming muttered. Then, his figure flashed and he left the place, heading in the direction he had come from. Of course, Lu Ming was very cautious. He was afraid that he would run into Yi Qiuxian and the others. Guillermo had not refined the demonic bone puppet yet and was not a match for them. If he ran into them, he could only retreat. Fortunately, Lu Ming did not run into Yi Qiuxian and the others after traveling for hundreds of thousands of miles. At this moment, a huge surviving species of the untainted land had its eyes on Lu Ming. It was a lion. Its body was fiery red as if it was burning. Its aura was powerful and it was a 9th-level divine master. Good. I was just about to find a surviving species of the untainted land to set it up. I didn't expect it to come here by itself. Lu Ming revealed a faint smile. The fiery red lion pounced at Lu Ming. Its sharp claws swiped at Lu Ming's chest. Lu Ming did not dodge. He allowed the lion's sharp claws to strike his chest. Blood splattered. A piece of flesh was ripped out of Lu Ming's chest. However, at the same time Lu Ming attacked. The war god's spear appeared in his hand and he thrust it at the lion's head. At such a close distance and with Lu Ming's current strength, the lion could not dodge at all. The war god's spear pierced through its head and it died instantly. Lu Ming circulated his taboo energy. The wound on his chest rapidly healed. Lu Ming did not dodge and allowed the lion to attack him on purpose. He wanted to pretend that he had fought with the surviving species of the untainted land and was seriously injured. In the end, he killed the surviving species of the untainted land and escaped. Pulling out the war god's spear, Lu Ming flew towards the canyon that he had his eyes on. Of course, along the way, Lu Ming deliberately spilled a little of his blood. In that case, when Yi Qiuxian and the rest saw this, they would definitely think that Lu Ming had been attacked by the surviving species of the untainted land. Although he had killed the surviving species of the untainted land, he had also suffered serious injuries and was bleeding all the way. They would then find Lu Ming based on the blood stains. Even if the lion's corpse was eaten by the other surviving species of the untainted land, with the intelligence of Yi Qiuxian and the others, they would definitely be able to deduce that Lu Ming had been injured in the fight with the surviving species of the untainted land. They would find the canyon based on the blood stains. I'll meet you guys in that canyon, Lu Ming muttered. Along the way, Lu Ming would leave a few drops of blood every once in a while. Along the way he arrived near the canyon. Then Lu Ming entered the canyon and sat down cross-legged, waiting quietly. Now all he had to do was wait. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. The bone demon had already finished refining the devil bone puppet, but there was still no trace of Yi Qiuxian and the others. Lu Ming was not in a hurry. After all, the underground world was quite big. It would not be easy to find Lu Ming's blood stains. Another 3 days passed. They're here. The bone demon's voice rang out in his sea of consciousness. Lu Ming suddenly opened his eyes and looked around. He deliberately shouted, "Who's there?" Lu Ming, how long has it been since we last met? Have you forgotten about us? A cold voice rang out. Outside the canyon, a few figures walked over. The one in the middle was Yi Qiuxian. On his left and right were two Lord of Heaven experts. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Around the canyon, another 4 figures appeared and surrounded Lu Ming. They were the other 4 Lord of Heaven. Yi Qiuxian, how did you find this place? Wait, my bloodstains. Lu Ming deliberately pretended to have a drastic change of expression. It's too late to think of it now. Yi Qiuxian sneered, his killing intent cold. He continued, Yi Chuzi and Yi Lingshan were killed by you, right? Are you talking about the 2 Lord of Heaven? So what if they are? Perhaps the next one will be you? Lu Ming said coldly.